Chapter 224. The first group had already set off for about 10 minutes, and the second group where Qin Guang was waiting quietly at the starting point, with the dull roar of the engine coming one after another. On the cliff next to the starting point, there was a huge white screen about 30 meters long. The huge screen was projecting the final sprint of the first group of contestants. The commentator was screaming at the top of his lungs at an extremely fast speed. However, Qin Guang felt a little bored. The level of these people was too low. Others were watching with passion, but he felt like a professional boxer watching a few children fighting in the mud. The camera on the huge screen kept changing, but it forced a sense of expectation. The organizer was really willing to spend a lot of money. Every corner of the track was equipped with high-speed cameras, and there were 3 helicopters shooting from high altitude in mid-air. There were no blind spots in all directions, and the fierce competition process was completely displayed on the huge screen. The standards of the car gambling competition were extremely high. Although it could not be broadcast on TV, the organizer of the mid-mountain racetrack was rich and capricious. Not only was it fully equipped with all kinds of facilities, but it even hired a professional TV director to broadcast the whole process, and invited a well-known car racing commentator. There was also a huge data analysis team behind it. At the starting point, the finishing point, as well as the 2 rest points in the middle of the track, there were giant screen projections set up to allow every spectator, regardless of whether they knew cars or not, to fully immerse themselves in this blood-boiling atmosphere. The organizer's goal was basically achieved, and the atmosphere was indeed enthusiastic. Take the parking lot of the starting point where Lu Fei was, for example. It was almost crowded, with at least 10,000 people gathered there. Counting the other 3 huge screens, there were at least 40,000 spectators in the whole car gambling competition. Of course, this kind of underground grand event and the gathering of big shots from all sides also made the local police of Xianxia fully alert, and mobilized thousands of police officers to prevent accidents. At this time, Lu Fei was standing with the local big shot of Xianxia next to her. This big shot was Lu Fei's uncle, and was regarded as the top of the rising forces in Xianxia. He usually did not show himself and was extremely low-key. Now it was dark, but he still wore a pair of sunglasses and refused to take them off. Even if Lu Fei complained that he was almost blind, he did not respond. Jie usually didn't have the opportunity to be so close to such a big shot. Although he was very good at modifying cars, he was just a small figure in the entire Xianxia. He had to thank Lu Fei for this opportunity. When he thought about how the car he had personally modified would be driven by the racing god Wang Qing, who worshipped him to the extreme, he found it hard to suppress his emotions. Jia was subdued by the big boss's aura and didn't dare to say anything else. Seeing that the second group was about to start, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Sister Lu Fei, is racing god really as good as brother Wang Qing says? How is he going to compete today? Lu Fei crossed her arms, feeling uneasy. You're asking how powerful he is. I can only tell you that he's even more powerful than Wang Qing said. Beyond your imagination, subverting your worldview. As for how he plans to compete today, I want to know too. However, this is only the first round of the elimination round, and his opponent is not very strong. Perhaps he will only run around for fun and will not go all out. Even if I want to go all out, I can't, right? After all, you guys came in such a hurry that you didn't even have time to familiarize yourself with the track. Brother Racing God, this is your first time on this track, right? By the way, is the Nasai added strong enough? Did you guys try it on the test track today? F***ck off. Jia touched a sore spot. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Fei stomped hard on the back of his foot, and then kicked him in the back, sending him flying. Finally getting rid of the fly, Lu Fei adjusted her mood slightly, shook her head and muttered to herself, "Forget it, don't worry about him. There's no point in worrying. Since he's here to do this, of course he's aiming for the title of Racing King. Of course he has to get off to a good start from the first round. Speaking of which, this live broadcast is really good. It's not any worse than a regular race on TV." Although she felt that Qin Guang was a bit of a scammer, Lu Fei always felt that she might be able to witness, participate in the creation of a legend with her own eyes. That guy, he's here to win for 7 days in a row. Just thinking about it made her excited and her heart itch. Lu Fei fiercely turned her head to the middle-aged man in sunglasses beside her and asked, "Uncle Qing, can you help me find the organizer of this race and get the full recording of the 7 days of the race?" Uncle Qing touched his sunglasses. Xiao Fei, isn't this race usually only 4 days? Why did you say 7 days? Lu Fei didn't know what to say. She didn't speak again, only thinking that if he was really destined to become a legend here, but he didn't want anyone to recognize his identity, it would be too shameful for the legendary racing god to not have a beauty by his side. If it really doesn't work, then this lady will risk her life to accompany him. These few days this lady will give him a lot of benefits. How about I become a racing girl for him? Aren't all men like this? Extreme speed is passion. A woman's body is passion. If you can really keep winning, then this lady will give you enough to touch. Today I'll let you touch my ass. If you can become the champion, then tomorrow I'll let you massage my chest through my clothes. If you can really keep winning, this lady will give you more benefits every time. If you have the ability, then add it to my bed. Of course, you must run a race that can make this lady so excited that her legs go weak. Although this lady's talent isn't that good, she is passionate about racing. If I can't be the racing god, then I'll be the racing god's woman. Under normal circumstances, of course, Lu Fei wouldn't have such crazy thoughts, but today she wasn't normal. She didn't want to be normal. Udal was a racer from India. About a year ago he was still struggling to find a way out of the slums. But today he was already sitting in car number 1, a Mitsubishi EVO that had been modified beyond recognition. The boss invested $300,000 in this car. The boss said that I'm a genius racer that can't be found in India for decades. I want to use this car. I want to win back 7 cars for the boss. A few million $. I can get at least $1 million. I'm Udal. I want to use my hands to win back the future that belongs to Udal's family. Udal's blood gradually boiled and burned. He put his foot on the accelerator and stepped on it again and again. The 500 horsepower V6 engine forced into the EVO was making a dull roar. It wanted to devour all the darkness in front of it. Qin Guang's number 3 Matte GTR didn't move. It just quietly parked behind the EVO. It was as quiet as an owl looking for its prey in the night sky. Behind the V-shaped special agent mask, Qin Guang's dark eyes silently looked at the EVO's tail that was madly spewing exhaust gas. His left hand was moving back and forth between the gear lever and the steering wheel again and again. The steering wheel was on the right side and it did cause him some trouble. He had to adapt to changing gears with his left hand as soon as possible. At this time, the referee was standing next to the starting line with a starting gun in his hand. He looked down at his watch again and again. Another referee was standing next to him, holding the Chinese redbud flower flag that represented Xianxia. The flag hung on the flagpole was blocking the front of the number 2 car. Another referee was standing on a high platform about 30 meters in front of the starting line, carrying a high-powered spotlight on his shoulder. The girl with long blonde hair and revealing clothes was already standing in the middle of the track. She slightly spread her legs and stood in place like a compass. Her waist was thin, her breasts were huge, and her butt was perky. She was as hot as the hot summer sun. The bikini strap wrapped around the girl's huge breasts was as thin as a spider's web, as if it would break with a gust of wind. Qin Guang's eyes lit up. He sat up straight and thought to himself, this girl's body is really explosive. What is she going to do? Could it be that the legend is true? This girl will take off her bikini in public? And then throw it into the air? Oh my God. So shameful. Does her family know about this? Will such a woman still be able to get married in the future? At this time, the referee who was holding the gun suddenly raised his hand high into the air. The hot girl stuck her fingers into the bikini strap in the middle of her breasts. She was ready to move. The tens of thousands of people who were noisy as if they were going to a market suddenly became dead silent. Lu Fei clenched her fists tightly and pressed on her full breasts. She almost stopped breathing. Bang! The starting gun sounded. The Chinese redbud flower flag was waved and drew a semicircle in the air. The spotlight suddenly flashed. The bikini girl fiercely pulled with her right hand. Under the bright and glaring headlights, the blood-red bikini flew into the air, and 2 huge breasts were unreservedly revealed in front of the world. The 8 mechanical beasts let out a deafening roar at the same time. They suddenly started up and madly sprinted forward. Qin Guang's car racing competition had officially begun. Chapter 225. The second group of the first round of the Xianxia car gambling competition has officially begun. I am your commentator, Mr. X. Welcome to the half-mountain racetrack. The commentator's voice came from the loudspeaker. He spoke very fast, loud, and full of passion. Lu Fei's heart was in her throat along with the billowing smoke and dust that soared into the sky. Her eyes stared at the number 3 matte GTR in the traffic and she clenched her fists tightly. Qinguang, win a car king and show me. Jie, is there any problem with the performance of your car? Seeing Qinguang rushing out from the starting line shoulder to shoulder with the other cars, Lu Fei was too nervous and asked Jie, who was beside her. Jie was furious. Aren't you looking down on my professionalism? Of course there is no problem with the performance of this car. I guarantee it with my reputation. In the whole of Xianxia, there are no more than 3 people who can put an 800 horsepower V12 engine into a GTR and adjust the car's power perfectly. I am one of them. You are questioning the professionalism of my team. Jie fiercely patted his chest, expressing his extreme displeasure at Lu Fei's questioning. 800 horsepower? Lu Fei frowned slightly. But he didn't show any advantage at the start. Jie curled his lips. He's in the middle of the cars. He can't crash into the small EVO in front, can he? Don't worry, this car will be able to do whatever the racing god is capable of. It definitely can't drag your racer god down. From the starting line, there was a straight track about 300 meters long. All the drivers were crazily releasing the power of the sports car on this straight track. In ancient wars, swords and sabers were weapons that caused people to shed blood and break bones. But in this race, the roaring supercars were the deadly weapons that these racers used to compete with each other. As for shifting gears with his left hand, Qinguang was indeed not used to it. At the start he couldn't show the seamless shift that he was familiar with, and many times he felt sluggish when shifting gears. He also wasn't fully familiar with the powerful performance of this magically modified GTR with an 800 horsepower V12 engine. This wasn't a problem with Jie's car tuning. It was purely because he had just gotten started. The coordination between the man and the car was not perfect, just like when he touched Zhong Bai's Ferrari FF for the first time. Outsiders might not be able to tell, but Qinguang understood. However, he was not in a hurry. 95 life and death experiences in the racing god training ground had long since merged his flawless driving skills into his blood, every inch of his muscles and every bone in his body. What he needed to do now was to slowly get used to the car and the right steering wheel on this 18-kilometer-long winding mountainous track. Fortunately, in this group his car's performance was strong enough. Even if he made a mistake in the beginning, he did not fall behind and he still firmly occupied the 3rd place. In fact, in his usual state he would have accelerated and killed the EVO in front of him. Although it was only 100 meters away from the first bend, Qinguang did not need to slow down at all and could easily float past it. However, he still restrained his impulses. The whole race was still long and there was no need to rush. He would slowly assimilate the car into his body first. Unlike the regular international rally, this was an underground race without clear rules and regulations. A racetrack. There were no strict rules for participating cars. In terms of equipment, the 500 horsepower EVO of the Indian guy in front of Qinguang was completely outclassed by Qinguang's magically modified GTR, which Wang Qing had invested tens of millions of dollars in. Of course, taking into account the complex bends of the track as well as the uphill and downhill sections, the better the performance of the car, the faster it would run. No one wanted to accidentally lose their life here. How many people would not slow down when facing a scissors turn? Therefore, a good car did not necessarily mean that one would win. 4 years ago, a certain pretentious young man had driven a Koenigsegg with more than 1,000 horsepower. He had thought that he was very impressive and had planned to kill everyone, but in the 3rd round he had decisively given the car away to Tommy Diesel, who had appeared out of nowhere. It was a pity that the guy was looked down upon, and even after giving him a big gift he did not become a good friend of the new king of cars. Lu Fei's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. She also knew cars very well. She thought that since this GTR had a terrifying 800 horsepower, Qinguang should have accelerated on the straight and overtaken it. How could he let the broken EVO in front of him overtake him? At this time the front was about to enter the turn. Other than Qinguang, the other 7 cars had formed a long snake formation on the left. During this period, there were naturally several fights and changes of positions. However, as they were about to enter the turn, no one dared to mess around. No one wanted to be eliminated because of a collision at the beginning. There was still a long time to go. Although Qin Guang was not used to it, he still relied on the good performance of the car and followed the EVO tightly. He did not leave any opportunity for the other Ferrari 599, which was eager to cut in. Qin Guang was a little unhappy. You want to overtake me? If you have the ability, don't fall into the last four. If I have the chance, I'll eat your car. Even if you survive this round, you'll become my dish sooner or later. Damn, I suddenly encountered the right steering wheel and I was not used to it. As a result, I was bullied by a dog. Even a cat or dog dares to jump in front of me. Just you wait. At this time, Lu Fei could no longer see the situation in the team formation. However, a helicopter was closely following the team formation and moving forward. The high-definition high-speed camera in the sky was taking a panoramic view of the situation of all the cars and projecting it on the giant screen at the same time. Lu Fei stared at the giant screen and muttered to herself, "The first turn is right in front of us. Perhaps he's planning to show off his terrifying non-deceleration drifting again at the turn?" In the blink of an eye, the McLaren 675 was the first to enter the turn, and it drifted beautifully. The Mitsubishi EVO followed closely, 2 car spaces behind the McLaren. Qin Guang's Matt Jeter was still behind the Mitsubishi EVO, a full car space behind. Lu Fei's eyebrows furrowed even more. He slowed down. This was not his normal state at all. The difficulty of this turn was not even considered basic on Phoenix Spring Mountain. It seemed that the right-hand steering wheel had indeed caused him some trouble, especially when he was drifting just now. There was a rare momentary tremor in the car. Although it was fleeting, it clearly showed that he was stuck when he was shifting gears. Ajia sighed at the side. Brother Racing God is drifting quite well. The EVO in front is quite sneaky. Its performance is not that great, but it's quite good at getting stuck. Lu Fei shook her head. This is not even 1/10 of his normal level. Ajia was dumbfounded. What? Don't brag too much. At this time, Qin Guang had just exited the turn when the Ferrari 599 suddenly pulled to the right, intending to use this 200-meter-long straight road to overtake Qin Guang and the EVO in front. Lu Fei clenched her fists tightly. "No way. This is the first time in my life that I'm seeing the racing god being overtaken?" At this time in the GTR, Qin Guang was also furious. "Damn it. You're taking advantage of me? Faster, see." He pulled hard and threw the V-shaped Special Agent Team mask to the side. Since he was already on the road, there was no need to be afraid of his face being captured by the camera. At the same time, he pushed the engine's horsepower to the maximum. The exhaust pipe suddenly exploded, spewing flames. All the potential of the V12 engine was completely unleashed at this moment. "It's accelerating." Lu Fei cried out in alarm. But he's about to be overtaken. The 599 is accelerating first. It can't be. Is he going to force a parallel? Overtake the EVO first? Will he overtake it now? Ajia also shouted. He was as nervous as Lu Fei. What is this guy doing? Is he trying to snatch a position? Is he crazy? The commentator could not help but shout. Just then Lu Fei shook his head vigorously. No, he won't. Although the 599 has a higher speed, your magically modified GTR has better performance and can accelerate even faster. Just wait and see, he'll overtake you in one breath. Even if it looks like he's infinitely close, everything is actually under his control. This guy, he's angry. Although that was what she said, the nervous expression on her face still revealed her true feelings. Qin Guang's thrilling maneuver not only scared Ajia, but it also caused an uproar among the 40,000 viewers in front of the giant screen. The blonde driver sitting in the 599 was even more furious. T. I'm going to kill you. The Ferrari 599 did not slow down. It was still accelerating. The helicopter's camera was no longer focused on other places. It was completely focused on the position where the 3 cars were squeezed together, and it kept zooming in. Under the watchful eyes of the audience, the matte GTR and the yellow 599 were approaching each other. The right rear of the GTR and the left front of the 599 were approaching each other at a speed visible to the naked eye. From the perspective of the camera in midair, it seemed like they had completely collided. Oh my God. Chapter 226. Just as everyone was screaming, the timid ones had already closed their eyes, and Lu Fei's eyes were about to bleed. The distance between the matte GTR and the yellow 599 suddenly widened. Although it had accelerated, Qin Guang's car performance was slightly better, and he had finally overtaken his opponent. Udall, who was sitting in the Mitsubishi EVO, was scared out of his wits, but he did not want to give up. He stepped on the accelerator like crazy. But it was useless. His car's performance was completely overtaken by his opponent. Qin Guang and the 599, one in front and one behind, overtook the EVO in an instant. Damn it! The person in the GTR must be a lunatic. Isn't this guy afraid of death? The spectators not far from Lu Fei had already started cursing. The contestant in the number 3 car is playing with his life. The commentator, who had been silent all this time, finally said something. There was a sense of relief in his voice. Obviously, he was also sweating so hard that he had forgotten to explain. Lu Fei gently stroked her sweat-drenched hair. You bunch of naive people, how do you know what kind of person is sitting in that car? In fact, everything was under his control. She thought of a line that often appeared in fantasy novels. She used to think it was funny, but now she felt that it made sense. Ignorant and pathetic mortals, how can you understand the world of God? Qin Guang had gradually found his form, and he would become more and more unstoppable. You are lucky to be able to witness the birth of a god at such a close distance. Let's see how he ascends the altar step by step in 7 days. In ancient legends, God built the city of Rome in 7 days. Now Qin Guang was going to use 7 days to become a god. A real god. The McLaren 675 in front led the way into the second corner. The distance between Qin Guang and him was still maintained at the level of 2 cars. This guy's car's performance was good enough, and his level wasn't bad. He drew lots and got the first row of seats. His luck was also unreasonably good. It was time for him to show off for a bit. At the second turn, Qin Guang still did not show his terrible non-deceleration magic. He slowed down the car in advance and steadily entered the turn. But Lu Fei knew that it was different. This time his turning and drifting were smoother than the last time. Soon the true divine skill was about to appear. Lu Fei wasn't the most knowledgeable person present, but anyone who dared to sign up for the race had to have some skills. Whether it was the first group that had reached the finish line or the other contestants that were waiting to depart, most of them were staring at the giant screen. There were also some poor racers who hadn't signed up at all, or who had been unlucky enough to have their spots snatched away by people like Wang Qing. The third GTR is a little strange. One of the drivers couldn't help but voice his opinion. What happened? The people around him didn't quite understand. I can't tell exactly what's going on, but I think he's turning more and more smoothly. Bullsh *T, you think he can improve his skills while running? Also, I think he's running a bit conservatively. He doesn't seem to be familiar with the track at all. He's driving a modified GTR with at least 700 horsepower, and he's not familiar with the track in advance? Is he here to give us money? Don't joke around. How could he be in the last 4? Enough talking. Just keep watching. You'll know. After taking off the mask, Qin Guang suddenly felt refreshed. Wearing a mask still affected his vision, but it was much more comfortable now. He slowed down during the turn not only because he wasn't familiar with shifting with his left hand, but also because he was unfamiliar with steering with his right hand during a sharp turn. But after 2 turns he gradually felt more comfortable. After all, both his left and right hands were his wives, and both his first and second wives were good wives. He used his right hand most of the time to masturbate. Oh no, to eat, play Dota or do anything else. It wasn't difficult for him to get used to the feeling of steering. Turning his head to look at the rearview mirror, the poor EVO had been overtaken again, and the 599 was still hot on his heels. The fourth car was a modified blue Lamborghini. Although it was called LP560, it should have at least 700 horsepower. But so far Qin Guang's speed had been controlled below 100 miles per hour, which was indeed conservative. The difficulty of the mid-mountain racetrack was not much different from the Fengquan mountain racetrack, and the corners were sharp and steep, but that wasn't a problem for him. It was about to turn again. Qin Guang got up slightly, stretched his shoulders and calculated the time. I'll familiarize myself with 8 more turns. If I remember correctly, after the 8 turns is a series of Z-shaped turns, and I'll end this boring game there. The race had been white hot at the beginning, but now it had gradually calmed down. The blonde guy in the 599 was a bit of a cheat. Although his car was not bad, his skills seemed to be a bit lacking. At the beginning of the race, when Qin Guang had pressured him, it seemed to have scared him. He had been too conservative when entering the next few turns, and he had actually been overtaken by Udall, the Indian guy with 500 horsepower. This was a drift race that belonged to the Benz, and the tyrannical horsepower could only create a slight advantage on the straightaway. In the long 18 kilometers of the race, there was an average of a turn every 200 meters, and there were nearly 100 big and small turns throughout the race. What really determined victory or defeat was the art of controlling the corners. The one who controlled the corners controlled the race. Perhaps when the race was white-hot, there might be a desperate change of direction on the straightaway, but in the first round, where the gap in strength was relatively large, it was difficult to see such a situation. Perhaps in the second round, when the teams with less than 600 horsepower were basically useless, and when everyone's level and vehicle performance were infinitely close, such a situation would really occur. Of course, this certainly did not include Qin Guang's group. Since everyone could see with the naked eye that he was rapidly adapting and becoming stronger, Lu Fei felt a huge weight lifted off her shoulders. When the Racing God training class first started, she had heard from Zhong Bai that Qin Guang was completely unable to adapt to the performance of a sports car. It was also his first time driving a sports car on the Phoenix Spring Mountain racetrack. He was basically playing around in the first half of the race, and only really exerted himself in the second half. As a result, he ran at a terrifying average speed of 138 kilometers per hour. Now his situation was not much different from that day. Sure enough, after obediently following the McLaren 675 through 7 turns, Qin Guang finally made his move when they were about to enter the Z turn. At this time Master Guang was a little annoyed. Old man remembered wrong. There are only 7 turns. Well, don't mind those details. After all, you only saw the map once. The McLaren driver was still advancing at a familiar pace. He felt that he was in good form today and his luck was pretty good. He had taken the lead from the start, and it looked like he could maintain this advantage until the end. Oh, is the first slightly scary Z-turn in front? It doesn't matter. I've run here at least 50 times. He smiled confidently, released the accelerator and lightly hit the brakes, preparing to enter the turn. He controlled the speed of the corner at 92 kilometers per hour. This was the most perfect drift speed, and he wanted the young people behind him to learn what a perfect drift was. Then he was overtaken. The matte GTR's taillights dragged a dazzling red line across his body. Is this guy crazy? This is at least 110 kilometers per hour. He's going to fly out. Not only him, but the more than 40,000 people standing in front of the huge screen were also in an uproar. This guy's brakes are broken, right? Is he going to die? Poor guy. Not good. The third driver's car is out of control. If he enters the corner at this speed, he will definitely go off the track or hit the guardrail. The commentator, Mr. X, even made a direct judgment on Qin Guang. Chapter 227. Many years later, there would still be people who would remember this scene with great relish. Because this was the first time they had witnessed this godly skill that should not have appeared in the world. The mysterious man wearing the V Special Agent Team mask had pushed the art of car racing to a height that ordinary people simply could not reach. The shadow he had left behind seemed to envelop the entire world of car racing until the end of human civilization. Even if the people who came after him threw their lives away, they still could not touch the slightest trace he had left behind. At first, people thought he was a madman, that this was his accidental mistake, and that he had survived by an even more accidental fluke. But after this accident reappeared again and again, people suddenly realized that this was the godly skill that was called inevitable. But at this moment, these people all held their breath, thinking that the first serious accident in the car racing competition so far was about to happen. So sudden, so tragic, and completely unprepared. Even Lu Fei, who had unparalleled confidence in Qin Guang, still clenched the clothes in front of her chest at this moment, and the valuable alligator skin was scratched deeply by her fingernails. Different from the last time when she ate his dust behind his back, and different from what Zhong Bai and the others had said, this was the first time Lu Fei had truly seen Qin Guang's godly skill so clearly through the camera. Her heart was pounding and every beat was like the sound of a drum. Perhaps she was worried about Qin Guang, Or perhaps she was ecstatic about her luck as a car fan. The commentator Mr. X was completely in the zone, roaring like a machine gun. He's turning. He's not slowing down. Familiar drifting method, the steering wheel and the car body are in a tangent state. He's still hitting the accelerator. The front of the car is swinging over. The rear of the car is about to hit. He's speeding up. He's speeding up in the drift process. He's charging over. Oh my God. What the hell am I seeing? How did he do it? What happened? Mr. X, who had commentated at least 100 races, even lost his voice in shock, completely unable to believe his own eyes. He was clearly about to hit, but he was always just that little bit away. He had actually drifted past the turn at a speed of 110 kilometers per hour. Just like that, he had widened the distance between him and the McLaren 675 by more than 50 meters. At this time, the advantage of having a high-speed camera live broadcast was revealed. The director switched the image in time, and the video of the GTR's cornering appeared on the screen at 5 times slower. First, it switched to 4 slow-motion replays, one of which was a high-altitude shot and the other 3 were arranged at 3 points along the bend to capture the front and side shots. After the first slow-motion replay, they cut back to the bird's-eye view of the sky. The data analysis team's results were quickly presented. Only then did the crowd finally understand what had happened. The rear of Qin Guang's car was about to touch the guardrail, but it was still a little short and there were no sparks. The quick-witted director quickly cut into the data calculated by the computer. A ruler with an enlarged distance mark appeared on the screen, and it followed the movement of Qin Guang's car to always stay at the shortest point. 5 mm. 4 mm. 5 mm. 6 mm. 4 mm. These numbers kept changing and appearing, causing everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. During this high-speed movement, the distance between the rear of the car and the guardrail was always controlled between 4 to 6 millimeters. What terrifying control! Soon the second set of data analysis came out. Through the analysis of the tire speed, the MAT GTR's power changes and distribution were clearly analyzed at the moment of cornering. In just a few seconds, his power distribution had undergone a total of 9 drastic changes, proving that he was changing gears. On average, he changed gears 3 times every 2 seconds. The power distribution was so perfect that people couldn't look directly at it. The terrifying throttle control and 4-wheel drift. During the drift, the car was always in a state of understeer. The driver in the GTR completely corrected the direction of the car during the high-speed drift through the perfect microcontrol of the car's accelerator, gear and direction. At every moment he exerted the engine's horsepower to the extreme to enter the corner at such a high speed. High-speed cornering. There was no loss of speed at all. The superb control of the steering wheel, the unparalleled release of power from the accelerator, and the godlike speed of shift. What kind of terrifying monster was sitting in the car? The scene changed again and finally returned to the live broadcast. At this time, Qin Guang had completely passed through the Z-shaped corner, and he was far ahead of everyone else. Audie's body went limp and he slumped to the ground, shaking his head in disbelief. What did I see? What did I see? Lu Fei held onto the Chevrolet SUV beside her, and she could no longer stand steadily. Her face was so red that it was enough to cause blood loss to her brain. Her breathing was as heavy as a bellow, and her full breasts were almost hurting from the violent beating of her heart. The space between her legs seemed to be wet from excitement. See, I told you he's God. The real God of racing. He's not something we called out, but a real God. Even Lu Fei, who had been mentally prepared, was in such a state, let alone the others who had seen such a godly skill for the first time. The originally noisy parking lot was silent. Only the lonely frog under the night sky finally got a brief moment of peace, and it hid in the grass next to the parking lot and croaked. These stupid humans, is that glowing thing so beautiful? The ones who were the most shocked were the drivers who had already finished competing or were about to compete. This was even more shocking than Dominic Diesel's sudden appearance. At least the king of racing was still human. His cornering skills were simply not something that could appear in the human world. Are we actually going to compete with such an opponent? Was this a coincidence of his or was it deliberate? In the following corners, Qin Guang did not show this godly skill of not slowing down at all. Just now he had barely used his left hand to change gears at the speed of light. In order to achieve his goal, he had forced his muscle control to be perfect, and now his left hand was a little tired. Forget it, anyway it's good to get first place. Next I'll run more easily and casually. If I scare people no one will come to save the car and I'll lose 3 cars. Then he quietly finished the whole course at an average speed of close to 140 kilometers per hour. On this track with a total length of 18 kilometers, he was 3 kilometers ahead of the McLaren 675 in second place. This made the conceited young man start to doubt his life. When Qin Guang crossed the finish line, whether it was at the parking lot at the finish line, the parking lot at the starting point, or even the 2 parking lots in the middle section, they all cheered in unison. Everyone wanted to see what kind of person was sitting in this matte GTR. However, he did not stop at all and rushed straight forward. In an instant he was far away along the road at the end of the track, and disappeared into the darkness, leaving only an afterimage. There was an uproar. Chapter 228. In the second group where Qin Guang was, there was no doubt that he would be the champion, while the second place was maintained by the McLaren 675 until the end. The young genius from India Udall barely managed to grab the third place after a desperate struggle. The European blonde guy driving the modified Ferrari 599 was lucky to stay in the top 4. The owners of the other 4 cars had to wait for the champion of this round like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Since they had come to this arena, no matter how unwilling they had to accept this cruel fate. Lu Fei looked at Qin Guang's car on the giant screen and was slightly relieved. She was really afraid that he would be stopped. The person arranged by Uncle Qing to be in charge of the support at the finish line didn't have to come out for the time being, but in the next round he definitely wouldn't have such good luck, right? Uncle Qing tomorrow. Lu Fei turned her head and said to Uncle Qing beside her. Uncle Qing directly interrupted her. Little Fei, you don't need to say anything, I understand. I will wait for him at the finish line tomorrow. I, Tang Chaoqing, still have some influence in Hong Kong, so it's not a problem to protect him. Previously I thought that if this young man really drove well I could let him be my driver later. Now it seems that I thought too much. I really don't know where you found such a monster. Lu Fei smiled. Even an experienced and knowledgeable big shot like you, Uncle Qing was stunned. Uncle Qing touched his sunglasses. When I was young I also raced for fun. I used to think that I had some ability, but compared with your friend I was simply a snail. Sister Lu Fei. Oh my god. This is really a god. God. Jie roared crazily, jumped up and wanted to pounce in front of Lu Fei, but before he could get close he was decisively punched in the forehead by Lu Fei and sent flying. No wonder he was so excited. Jie was obsessed with modifying cars, so of course he was also very interested in racing. Although Qin Guang didn't easily show his magic skills later on, the 2 numbers clearly written on the giant screen still made him excited to the point of going crazy. Time: 7 minutes 44 seconds. Average speed: 139. 54 kilometers per hour. He had broken the record of 133. 94 kilometers per hour that Diesel had set in the 7th round 4 years ago. So casually, the birth of a new record was so sudden, appearing in front of the world without any warning. This was only the first round. Unlike others, Jie knew what this meant. That man just arrived in Xianxia this afternoon. Today was the first time he used this car to participate in a race, and it was also the first time he drove the car onto this racetrack. He didn't even use the NOS system. This meant that this was far from his limit. He could still continue to raise his score. As the others passed the finish line one after another, the giant screen finally displayed the final results of all the racers in their group. Next to it was Diesel's record, which he had maintained for 4 years. In the loudspeaker next to the square, the commentator Mr. X roared at the top of his lungs, "A new record!" Tommy Diesel had maintained this record for 4 whole years. It was broken. This was only the first round. What a terrifying GTR. What a terrifying racer. Mr. X's almost roaring tone also stirred up the emotions of the other spectators. Many racer fans let out excited roars, excited to witness the birth of a new record with their own eyes. Even some women who weren't originally racing girls opened up their thin jackets, revealing their underwear or a pair of vacuum pants. It seemed that if they didn't open up their chests like this, they would be so excited that they would have difficulty breathing. Jie once again moved in front of Lu Fei, but this time he learned his lesson. He didn't dare to foolishly try to move closer, afraid of being beaten up again. He just said with a flushed face, "Sister Lu Fei, when Brother Racing God comes back, help me ask him if I can be his disciple? Even if I only learn 30% of his skills, I'm afraid I'll still be invincible in Xianxia." Lu Fei had completely calmed down at this time. Her heartbeat also gradually stabilized. After all, this situation was already within her expectations. Even strictly speaking, Qin Guang's performance today wasn't even as good as the first time he drove Zhong Bai's Ferrari FF at Mount Fengquan. After all, the performance of this magically modified GTR was far better than Zhong Bai's Ferrari FF, and the average speed today was only 139.54. One must know that the average speed he drove that day at Mount Fengquan with Wang Qing's other GTR was 150. This was just the beginning of a legend. Jia, don't be so excited here. He just swore 2 days ago that he would never teach people to race again. Otherwise, why do you think Wang Qing is lying in bed, and why is he here instead of Wang Qing? Also, let me tell you a secret. The standard he drove today was really not even a third of his normal level. This is the first time in his life that he drove a car with a right steering wheel. What? Lu Fei said it lightly, but Jia was completely dumbfounded, thinking that there was something wrong with his ears. When the shock exceeded a certain level, it could actually make people calm down in an instant. This was Jia's current state. He finally understood why Lu Fei always liked to look at the people around her like they were idiots. What are you guys so happy about? He wasn't in shape at all today. Everyone else used to drive the left steering wheel in the mainland. Today was the first time he drove the right, the first time he ran this track. He's going crazy. This opponent is ridiculously strong. He reminds me of Diesel from 4 years ago. Not far from Jia, a tall man wrapped tightly in a racing uniform said coldly. His brows were tightly furrowed. It was obvious that Qin Guang's performance had put a lot of pressure on the other contestants. It's not that scary. Although this person has some ability, he may not be on par with Diesel. Are you blind? You don't know the numbers on the scoreboard? 4 years ago, Diesel drove a modified version of the old Ford GT. Although it also had 800 horsepower, how much technology has been improved in these 4 years? Not to mention the new supercharger technology, whether it's the new suspension, the updated tire technology, or the brand new supermodel body stability system. Did it exist 4 years ago? Now it's fully promoted carbon fiber ultralight body. 4 years ago, this technology wasn't even mature yet. How much convenience can these things bring in cornering? Don't you think I'm not clear? That's true, but you can't deny that this gear is very strong. It's strong, but I don't agree with you comparing it to Diesel. Also, it also has 800 horsepower. 4 years ago, the turbocharger showed signs of slowing down after a long period of high-load operation, but now? This GTR is equipped with the 6.2T V12 engine that Mercedes-Benz introduced half a year ago. Whether it's the stability of the power output or the endurance, it's on a completely different level from the V8 4 years ago. If Diesel were to run the half-hill track again, do you think 133.94 would still be his limit? That's true. 4 years ago we thought Diesel was unreachable. But last year's champion, Yuan, easily reached an average speed of 133.76. It had to be said that what this person said was somewhat reasonable. His loud argument not only reached Lu Fei's ears, but also attracted the attention of many other racers. Yes. No matter what, this year's car racing competition will definitely be more exciting than the past 3 years. What a splendid start. They hadn't even raced yet, so no one was willing to admit defeat so easily. They were worshipping the former Diesel, but at the same time they were encouraging themselves. Listening to these people's self-righteous discussions, Jia had no intention of arguing with them. This feeling of being the only one sober while everyone else was drunk was really great. Chapter 229. On the other side, the third group of racers had already entered the track and were ready to set off. Lu Fei looked at it and felt bored. At that moment her phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was indeed Qin Guang. I've already met up with the people in front. I asked them to drive the car back to the modification factory. I'm coming back in an off-road vehicle. Did you help me choose a car? Remember, it must be the most expensive. Master Guang was very straightforward. Unlike other car lovers who might be picky when choosing a car, trying to see which car was rarer, and which car's modification method was more suitable for their taste, Qin Guang only had one standard: not the best but the most expensive. Of course, the better the performance of a sports car, the more expensive it would be. For example, a normal GTR only sold for 1.7 to 2.4 million, but its performance was much better than a Bentley Continental, which cost more than 6 million. Lamborghini cars were also famous for being pretty but useless. Lu Fei rolled her eyes in exasperation. You'll have to wait until the first round of the competition is over before heading to the terminal together. What's the rush? I've already picked one for you. It's the Aston Martin V8 Fantasy South Coupe in 7th place. It's almost 3 million and has some collectible value. It's not even 007 James Bond's DB10. What the hell are you talking about? Boring. At this moment Qin Guang was unhappy. Why didn't anyone drive a 918 like Lu Fei? Hehe, DB10? I have faith in you. Limited to 10 units worldwide. You can't buy it even if you have the money. It was auctioned in February last year for £1.6 million. Do you know how much money you have? Sigh, how I wish you could participate. I think your Porsche 918 Spider is pretty good. Faster, see. This guy is actually thinking of me. Lu Fei felt that she had run out of energy to complain. She really didn't want to waste time on this topic, so she changed her tune. Alright. That's all for the car selection. The cars later on will be more and more valuable. I say, what's wrong with you? In the first round, you ran an average speed of nearly 140 kilometers per hour, 3 kilometers ahead of the second place. Are you afraid that people won't know you're going against the natural order? Was it because you were afraid that the 10 great car kings wouldn't be able to set off, so you reminded them earlier that they should set off? Qin Guang's surprised voice came from the phone. Ale? I really didn't use my full strength. I was just running blindly. I'm holding back. Jia, who had been eavesdropping on Lu Fei and Qin Guang's conversation, couldn't help but say, keep your sister. Save your sister. Almost at the same time as Jia, Lu Fei cursed. Damn it. Before yesterday the highest speed on the track was 133.9. You raced it by almost 6 yards the moment you arrived. I don't want to talk nonsense with you anymore. Hurry up and come over, I want to strangle you to death. It's also my fault for not discussing tactics with you in advance. Since you're ahead in strength, you can't just run like this from the start. This is going to be a little troublesome. On the other side of the phone, Qin Guang felt wronged. Really? I didn't use my full strength. I probably didn't even use 20% of it. You see, my speed dropped a lot when I turned the corner. After all, the second wife is still not as good as the first wife. After changing gears too many times, my muscles are a little sore. Mistress. Left hand. It was a slip of the tongue. Sigh. Qin Guang, on the other hand, comforted Lu Fei. Forget it. Anyway, it's already like this. We'll just deal with it when it comes. I didn't expect myself to be so awesome. I can't blame the old man for being too fierce. I can only blame the opponents for being too weak. The strongest opponent in my group is only about the same level as Wang Qing. How can you blame me? I'm not familiar with the track yet. It's my first time running and I didn't dare to really speed up in many places. Let me put it this way. I'm already at the level of a world champion in sprinting. If you want me to race with a tortoise, I have to control my speed to be as slow as a tortoise. Isn't that difficult? Enough. Don't act tough anymore. The situation is already out of control. I'm going to call the police. Hurry up and come over. Lu Fei hung up the phone and turned her head to look around. Looking at the racers who were still excited, she thought to herself, if they knew that Qin Guang had so casually compared them to tortoises, would they want to chop me up? By the time Qin Guang came back in the off-road vehicle, the first round of the competition had already progressed to the 5th group. Perhaps it was because of his stimulation, or perhaps it was because of the explosive technological innovation by the major R&D companies at the end of last year that had truly brought the level of supercars into a new era. Stronger tires provided stronger grip. A stronger engine provided more power. A better suspension made the car more stable when cornering, and a more advanced onboard system made the car more stable when cornering at high speeds. New technology brought a new era, and this year's competition was completely different from previous years. In the next 2 groups, the records left by Diesel 4 years ago were broken one after another. Even the McLaren P1, which had the most outstanding performance, had also run above 139. It was very close to the level of 139.48. As Diesel's records were broken again and again, the racers began to raise their arms and shout, cheering for the arrival of a new era for racing. Only Lu Fei understood that the birth of God would, in the end, be over the bodies of countless talented mortals. Under God's throne, corpses would inevitably be strewn everywhere. Without more geniuses falling under God's blood-drinker sword, how could God's glory be revealed? Pitiful mortals. However, Qin Guang had run such a result in the first round. If everything went as expected, starting tomorrow the true masters from all over the world would set off. The further it went, the more dazzling Qin Guang's light became, especially after entering the battle to protect the car. The other 7 cars on the same stage would all become his enemies. At that time his opponents would all be truly top-notch and he would be the enemy of the entire world. Only then would his situation become truly dangerous. Forget it, if I don't break through the sky in the brilliant light, then I'll burn in the flames of hell. Apart from having unparalleled skills, every true racing king's greatest strength was precisely this kind of unstoppable momentum. Qin Guang didn't get out of the car and even Lu Fei directly got in and sat with him in the back. I just asked Uncle Qing to find someone to make a soft mask for you, and it will be sent over later tonight. In fact, I don't understand why you're so cautious. I don't think it's necessary. Qin Guang shrugged. You think it's easy. But for me this is like winning the lottery. It's already good enough that I'm not wrapped in a fewa. Think about it, I'm going to take away so many people's cars. Some people may be willing to admit defeat, but there must be people who are jealous and hate me. I'm not like you big shots in Wujing City. What if one day I get kidnapped while walking on the road? The two of them chatted for a long time. After watching Qin Guang's competition, the racing that could make anyone's blood boil had become dull. It was so much so that Lu Fei couldn't even be bothered to stretch her head out to look at the screen. Finally, when the first round of 8 races was over, no one could break the record set by Qin Guang today. But what Qin Guang was most looking forward to was the next part. It was time to take the money and lock the car. The old man was going to make a fortune. Chapter 230. On the way back to the hotel, Qin Guang's face was full of displeasure. During the process of locking the car and taking the money, he hid in the car and secretly looked at it. Lu Fei and Uncle Qing stood up for him and helped him get 1 million yuan in cash, which was locked in the box beside his hand. The Aston Martin V8 Castle S Coupe, which was targeted by Lu Fei, was also locked in the underground garage of the half-mountain racetrack. Before the dust of the car gambling competition settled, no one could touch it. The guy who locked the car seemed to be a real nouveau riche. From beginning to end he did not show the slightest displeasure and kept surrounding Lu Fei. It was not that he wanted to hit on Lu Fei, but he wanted to hit on Qin Guang, who was standing behind Lu Fei. It was not only this guy. From getting out of the car, getting the money, locking the car and returning to the off-road vehicle, there were at least hundreds of people trying to hit on her. If it weren't for the protection of Uncle Qing, Lu Fei would almost not have been able to leave. Many locals in Hong Kong recognized Uncle Qing, and those who were not from other places knew that he was a big shot who could not be offended after being pointed out by the locals. Even so, she was exhausted and sweating. If I knew it would be so troublesome, I should have asked you for a commission. After getting in the car, Lu Fei complained to Qin Guang while trying hard to tidy up her almost torn leather coat. Little Fei, don't say that. I just saw that you enjoyed the feeling of being surrounded by stars. Uncle Qing, who was sitting in the front row, made a joke. This was the first time that Qin Guang heard him speak. He almost thought that he was mute. He thought that this uncle's voice was really strange. It was like scraping a knife on the table and his ears were sore. Seeing Qin Guang's surprised face, Lu Fei explained, Uncle Qing fought in a war before and his throat was scratched by a bullet on the battlefield. Damn. He didn't die even after being shot in the throat. This world is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Fortunately, I have been low-key. Qin Guang's eyelids twitched. He had long felt that this uncle was powerful and it turned out to be so. Uncle Qing just smiled and didn't say anything. He waved his hand and signaled for the convoy to set off. Although many people wanted to stop him, no one dared to offend Uncle Qing. The organizer of the previous competition also came up to Uncle Qing and chatted with him for a while. In the end, he smiled bitterly and shook his head before leaving. He even promised to escort the GTR for the next few days. It was Uncle Qing who pretended to understand. "I'll have to trouble you for the next 7 days." This sentence stunned the organizer for a long time. 7 days? Now you say 7 days. If you weren't Tang Chaoqing, I would have slapped your face. It's not that I want to say this, but the prize money for this car racing competition is too low. He brought a car worth millions to participate in the competition, but he only got 1 million if he won, Qin Guang said as he stroked the lockbox in front of him with a face full of regret. Of course, even though he said so, he was still happy when he thought about the million in cash. Lu Fei looked at him in annoyance. "You've already taken advantage of me and you're still pretending to be innocent. This is only the first round and you got 1 million for nothing. What else do you want? After the second round tomorrow, you'll get another 1,500,000. You didn't pay for the car either. There's no such thing as a business without capital in this world." "But it's still too little." Qin Guang was still a little indignant. "It doesn't matter to me. Are those people who came to participate in the competition stupid? The input and output are not proportional at all." Lu Fei covered her face in pain. She only felt that it was too embarrassing. "Only you are so practical. It's all for the money. Others are after excitement and fame. Besides, who would want to lose in the first round? Won't the next few rounds accumulate? What if you get first place? Can't you still pick other people's cars? What if you become the king of cars? There are so many conceited people in this world. Just because you're good, you don't allow others to have dreams?" Qin Guang nodded. "That's true. Even a dabbler like Wang Qing dared to use a car worth 10 million to enter. There are quite a lot of fools. This GTR feels much better to drive than his last car." Lu Fei was already speechless. She actually felt that what he said made sense. On the other side, Qin Guang and Lu Fei stayed in the hotel in Simsha Sui and left. They didn't care that the matte GTR had completely exploded outside. The appearance of a speed of 139.54 officially opened the prelude to this year's car racing competition, which was different from the previous 3 years. Although there were some people who ran very close to this level later, they were still a little worse than him. Because of Uncle Qing, many people couldn't find out Qin Guang's identity in person. But when the first round of the competition ended and the crowd gradually dispersed, the hidden undercurrents gradually surged in the dark. Snowflakes of information flew from Xianxia to all parts of the world through email, WeChat, QQ, MSN or other channels. Diesel's record had finally been broken. And under the leadership of this person, a total of 13 cars broke Diesel's record in the first round of the Xianxia car racing competition. Just this piece of news instantly rendered a different halo to the Xianxia car gambling competition, whose status was gradually declining in the international arena. The matte GTR came from Jie's modification factory. This matter wasn't hidden for long. Soon someone found Jie overnight and tried to find out the driver's information from Jie. However, Jie didn't know Qin Guang's real name at all. As for his identity, he didn't know anything. But the people who came to inquire about the news had powerful backgrounds and he couldn't not say anything. After thinking hard, Jie barely made up such a person. It was a young man with an extremely mysterious identity. He came from the mainland and was escorted by the daughter of a big shot in the mainland's Sichuan province. He was also escorted by Xianxia's local big shot, Uncle Qing. He was very young, handsome, domineering, quiet and low-key. Other than that, there was nothing else that could be said. As for the identity of the original owner of the GTR, it wasn't difficult to find out. Wang Qing, the son of Wang Guxiong, the boss of the Wujing city's Dingshan gang. Wang Qing was now lying in the hospital, so this driver was definitely not him. Anyone who knew a little about the industry had already vaguely guessed this person's identity. It was indeed impossible to easily find out. Whether it was the daughter of the Lu family, Tang Chaoqing, or Wang Guxiong's son, any of these 3 people were not people who could be easily offended. A person who could make these 3 forces either send cars, people, or escort them didn't care about the outside world's reputation at all. This was a mysterious person who only wanted to hide in the dark, but he was overflowing with talent and unparalleled. He was only here to enjoy his own racing journey. Because of Uncle Qing, Jie wasn't put in a difficult position. After bragging about the identity he had made up again and again, he finally ended this busy day. Some people chose to believe what Jia said, some only believed part of it, and some didn't believe it at all. They only thought that the person was a top driver found by Lu Fei or Wang Qing. That was all. But no matter what, since the other party didn't want to reveal his identity, there wouldn't be any results unless he took the initiative to ask. At the same time, in an underground modification factory in Los Angeles, such a conversation was taking place. Diesel, your record in Xianxia has been broken. Some people say that you're outdated. Really? Interesting. In a small house beside a mountain road in Bangkok, Thailand, a young man so handsome that he didn't look like a man suddenly stood up from his chair, stretched and dialed a number. Ah Yuan, the CTR I left at your house is about to rust, right? Help me take it out to dry. I Wu Pan Junya want to come to Xianxia. Deep in the Brazilian rainforest, it was noon and the sun was blazing in the sky. A man sat on a motorcycle. Speed, you're already 33 years old. Don't go, okay? No. 33 years old, just right. When I come back, we'll buy the farm opposite. In a car factory in Detroit. Dad, let me go. You're the Sonic Shaker. The birth of a new car king must be approved by the Shaker family. Although you're old now, I'm your son. All right, Ferrand, do you like that car? The 19-year-old Fronte pointed his finger at the ferocious beast hiding in the corner. A terrifying monster with 1,200 horsepower. London, England. Racing is a sport for gentlemen. Let me, Ferdinand, go and tell the Wuxia people that Xianxia is still ruled by the British Empire. At least in the racing field. Jenny, I want to go to Xianxia with my Aston Martin Zagato. Beside the Great Rift Valley in Africa. Felix, are you going out to race again? Yes, I have to win back a sum of money. Otherwise, the chief will sell the newly discovered coal mine to the Wuxia people. I'll go to the Wuxia people's territory, win back money from them, and then buy back our coal mine from them. Not only that, more and more people with black skin, white skin, yellow skin, and brown skin set off from all over the world one after another. At this moment, in the eyes of the global underground racing world, Xianxia had turned into a black hole, or rather, a sun. One after another, extremely dazzling rays of light from all directions of the earth suddenly connected to the sky above Xianxia. The banquet of the global racing world began on this night. At this moment, the true god who was about to ascend to the altar was sleeping soundly on the hotel bed. His saliva wet the pillow without him knowing. Chapter 231. Unlike Qin Guang, who was sleeping soundly, Lu Fei, who was lying in the room next to him in the suite, was tossing and turning on the bed. When the hustle and bustle quieted down for a short while, her mind was turning over and over again, but the moment when Qin Guang showed his magic skill at the Z-curve. At a slower speed than in the giant screen at that time, she kept replaying it in slow motion. She felt that her heart was beating faster than a bird's. In the dead of night, her heartbeat sounded so ear-piercing, as if someone was really playing drums beside her. She couldn't stop trembling, and between her legs there was a wet. She suddenly decided to drop all the things at hand and come to Hong Kong. After arriving here, she was busy for a whole day. Of course, it was impossible to say that she was not tired. Lu Fei was also very tired, but she just couldn't sleep. She was also secretly proud in her heart. This group of people will not race in the future. But Zhong Bai and the others are not like me. They have no chance to be there in person and witness the racing god show his magic skill. Those who didn't truly understand cars, or those who loved cars, wouldn't be able to understand that the moment he turned the corner, he would be so excited that his hair would stand on end. Moreover, the person who displayed this godly skill was his friend, perhaps even half a master. This feeling is like the hardcore fans of the Brazilian team seeing Fat Luo break through Khan's defense in the World Cup final. It is also like the hardcore Comey staying in front of the TV, watching Kobe Bryant shoot the buzzer-beating three-point shot in the tiebreaker of the NBA Finals. Even if he can't find like-minded people to share his happy and excited feelings, it is enough to close the door and cover himself in a cup to laugh. Of course, Lu Fei also knows what Qin Guang's so-called blind race means today. Those people must be on the way, right? The peerless master who was once unattainable and could only look up to now has to compete with her master on the same stage, and it is very likely that he will be ruthlessly trampled under his feet. This kind of expectation really can't be expressed in thousands of words. In the southeast province, thousands of kilometers away, Tang Ying, tired but excited, is carefully pushing a wheelchair, slowly boarding the train to Wujing. Sitting in the wheelchair is a tired middle-aged woman. The expression on the woman's face looked a little ashamed, but more excited and agitated. Behind Tang Ying, Zhong Bai, with dark circles under his eyes, was accompanied by 3 bodyguards dressed in black. Behind the bodyguard were several men and women with complicated expressions. They were the woman's family. A little further away, a pale-faced middle-aged man was looking in this direction with a face full of despair. "Dad, let's wait a little longer. This auntie's kidney isn't the best match for you. We've already gone too far. Let's leave it at that." The middle-aged man's entire body shook. He turned around dejectedly and vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only endless loneliness. Qin Guang woke up early and felt refreshed. It had been a busy day yesterday. After getting off the plane, he went racing without any rest. When he returned to the hotel, it was already past 10 o'clock. He was slightly tired. Of course, the happiest thing was that he completely gave up on the rest of the final exams. He didn't have to read anymore and decisively went to bed to sleep soundly. As for the makeup test? What did you say? The wind is too strong for me to hear. There was only one problem that was a little awkward. He was overly excited during the race, which caused a little side effect. It wasn't too serious. It was just that he didn't bring a change of underwear. Hehe. What was more annoying was that he didn't know if there were people outside trying to find out his identity. Qin Guang couldn't go out easily. He had to spend the next few days in this hotel suite. Oh my god, this suite looked like it would cost a lot of money. There were many kinds of fitness equipment in the corner of the large living room. What was even better was that there were 4 computers in the room. When he came back last night, Qin Guang had already checked it. It was an i7 CPU and a Titan graphics card. The air of a tycoon hit him in the face. It couldn't be more fun to play Dota with it. Walking out of the room, he took out a cup from his bag and grabbed a handful of Longjing tea leaves from the dozen or so types of tea provided by the hotel. He brewed the tea and sat on the rocking chair by the windowsill to bask in the rising sun. Feeling the warm morning sun, he was extremely satisfied. When the tea cooled down a little, she took a sip and waited for the waiter to bring her breakfast. Damn, the life of a rich person is simply too awesome. I can't ask Lu Fei how much money she needs for a day. What if she asks me to return the money? I'll just pretend that I don't know anything. When is this woman going to wake up? What should I say to make her take the initiative to buy new underwear for me? The old man is going to become rich soon. He can only wear branded underwear like Sans Ho, right? After thinking about it and finishing the cup of tea, old man Guang still couldn't think of a reasonable plan to trick her. Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. Yeah, I'm thick-skinned. I'll just say it. A teacher for a day is a father for life. The old man had taught her once back then. There should still be a bit of a teacher-student relationship, right? With that thought, Lu Fei finally got out of bed. She had 2 panda eyes. It was obvious that she hadn't slept the entire night. Coincidentally, the waiter delivered breakfast at this moment. Lu Fei took the breakfast in a daze and ran straight to the bathroom in a daze, as though she hadn't seen Qin Guang at all. Just like that, Qin Guang sat by the window and looked at her wriggling on the floor like a zombie with black lines on his forehead. When the woman started taking off her clothes without closing the bathroom door, Qin Guang finally reacted. Chance. What? You said I was peeping? How could I do such a thing? I was just looking at my phone. Quietly hiding beside the bathroom door, Qin Guang didn't dare to poke his head out. Being quick-witted, he decisively turned on the camera and poked it out. My Popcorn 6S comes with a flipping camera function. How considerate. Qin Guang swallowed his saliva and chuckled as he looked at the screen. Lu Fei had just taken off her little pig on a sunny day pajamas, revealing her smooth, mirror-like back. Stuffed. As expected, one shouldn't wear underwear when sleeping. Then, without turning back, she casually closed the bathroom door. Didi Smita. After waiting for a long time, when she finally came out, Qin Guang was already sitting at the dining table, picking his teeth as though nothing had happened. They even delivered steak for breakfast. How luxurious. It's completely different from my impression of hotels. Lu Fei didn't know what had happened. She used a towel to dry her wet hair and walked over to sit on the dining table. After taking a shower, she seemed to be in a better state of mind. However, the movement of her head to the side and raising her hand caused the collar of her pajamas to fold up a little. Qin Guang's gaze went straight inside. Lu Fei pulled up her pajamas and glared at him. With my net worth, it's $1 million just to take a look. Qin Guang chuckled and quickly turned his head away. He took another sip of water and pretended to be an expert. It's so expensive. If I take a few more glances, I won't be able to pay off my debt for the rest of my life. When she finally finished eating, Qin Guang's expression changed. Lu Fei, I have an honorable and difficult task to entrust to you. Lu Fei was shocked and put down the glass of milk in her hand. What is it? Please tell me. Help me. Buy 3 pairs of 3-gun underwear. There was a small accident last night. Chapter 232. Lu Fei sucked in a breath of cold air and glared at him for about 10 seconds before she finally came back to her senses. Yesterday you were so handsome that my face was covered in blood. Even now when I look at you my face is still red and my heart can't control itself. Tonight I was going to give you more benefits. In the end? Now I'm still unable to extricate myself from your handsomeness last night, but you suddenly turned into a shameless clown. How could I acknowledge someone like you as my master? How could I be infatuated with such a man? Am I blind or what? I can't get used to your sudden change in style. Can't I? What should I do? This is a bit troublesome. You can't blame me. In that situation yesterday, I was just an innocent virgin and couldn't control myself at all. Hey, if I put it like this, can you understand my feelings at that time? Qin Guang had a headache and his face was full of distress. Lu Fei glanced at him impatiently and couldn't say a word for a long time. You drew a map last night, right? Although this shows that I'm very charming and it's something to be proud of. But doesn't this also mean that I've fallen into a trap of my own making? I purposely seduced him and got the map and then I have to buy underwear for him? To think that I, the dignified Lu Fei, the eldest daughter of the Dechuan Lu family, actually fell into the situation of buying underwear for someone with 3 shots. Just thinking about it makes me feel awkward. What should this old lady do? Forget it, I'll pay back the debts I owe from my previous life. You're still pretending to be innocent after getting a bargain. Luckily I've seen through you. Alright, I'll buy it for you. She chose to admit defeat. Qin Guang happily squeezed her hand. Thank you. You're really a good person. Damn. I've been given a good person card just like that. When Lu Fei stood in front of the men's luxury goods store with a veil covering her face, her mind was still in a daze. She really couldn't find the underwear that Qin Guang had specifically asked for. She had been walking around the Prince building for more than 2 hours, and her legs were about to turn to jelly. She really wanted to call Qin Guang and scold him. Can you not be so picky? You can just buy any brand of underwear. Why did it have to be 3 shots? But in the end she did not do so. Since she had already accepted the good guy card, it would be hard for her not to fulfill his request. Lu Fei didn't expect that she was trying to fish from a tree. What kind of place was the prince's building? It was full of luxury stores. A popular brand like 3 Guns would not be able to enter at all. At that moment Qin Guang, who was sitting on the computer and locked in a fierce battle with Xianxia, was completely unaware of Lu Fei's dilemma and embarrassment. That was because this strange opponent who refused to add him as a friend no matter what had come again. Since the glorious yet arduous mission had been entrusted to Lu Fei, Old Master Guang expressed that he wouldn't doubt the person he used and wouldn't use the person he doubted. Instead he would allow me to have a good fight with this destined enemy of mine for 300 rounds. Qin Guang didn't notice that the number of spectators in the battle between the two had already shot up to 5,000. The reason was very simple. This ID Xianxia was already firmly at the top of the national server. His celestial ladder points as high as 8,800 were simply unbearable. He was only 1,200 points away from the Tieba Almighty's 10,000 points. Still, this wasn't the weirdest thing. This ID, which had recently been on the top of all the major video highlights, the terrifying number 1 on the national server, had actually been matched into a match with less than 4,000 points. This strange phenomenon caused the originally widely criticized Dota 2 match system to be once again bombarded with criticism. Of course, it also attracted a lot of attention to this match, which was destined to be a massacre of noobs. A lot of people wanted to know how this number 1 on the national server, who had recently not only abused noobs, but also professional players, would torture this group of kids with less than 4,000 points. It wasn't until the details of Qin Guang's ID, which had been wittily renamed to Master Guang, was dug up and once again flooded the Dota 2 channel that a lot of people were suddenly enlightened. Many people suddenly remembered that this was the mysterious player who had also caused a stir in Tieba in the forums more than a month ago. His enigmatic and cheap cat and even the few matches where he had switched to the later stages of the game were equally dazzling and convincing. However, this brother seemed to be very lazy and didn't really rush for points. He had also been sanctioned by Xianxia some time ago, so his popularity had dropped slightly recently. These two were matched together again. Had they crossed the 4,000-point gap? What was originally a massacre of noobs had suddenly turned into a pinnacle showdown between two top experts and a group of noobs. Normal Dota was supposed to be a game for 5 people. Were these two going to forcibly turn the game into a 1v1? For such a strange match to appear, these two were destined to be enemies. Or was it that the automatic match system was witty enough to forcibly create a pinnacle situation? Ignoring the difference in celestial ladder points? And deliberately creating a situation where each of them was fighting 1 against 4? All sorts of factors had silently pushed this originally ordinary celestial ladder competition to the pinnacle. The number of spectators quickly exceeded 5,000, and it continued to rise. Qin Guang was playing the Blackbird mid laner, who had recently become very popular in the national server. Opposite him, Xianxia had pulled out Carl, the man who claimed to have 10 skills. The two decisively fought back and forth, competing with each other. Qin Guang was gnashing his teeth in anger. "I'm going to fix you." What he didn't notice was that the CPU usage of this super-configured computer was 50% higher than normal. Felt like he was playing Dota 2 at the same time. Meanwhile, in the Tongtian Holy Grail's world in the cup, Liuli was sitting naked in front of a virtual computer, desperately typing away with a wretched smile on her face. The general picture was basically no different from the back view of a goddess playing a game naked that was widely circulated on the internet. Someone wanted to see the front? Sorry, it was all a vast expanse of white fog. Small fry. Want to fix me? Dream on. VS is coming over in the fog? Want to catch me? It's about to reach 6. Want to rush over to trade health with me and smash big? Top lane is an invisibility talisman. Want to control talisman? VS is coming to ambush me again. Ready to cross the tower to kill me? Liuli's nagging caused Lord Guang to directly collapse. He had lost unjustly and died with everlasting regret. Of course, Liuli knew his every move like the back of her hand and predicted the enemy's moves. Because what Qin Guang had to face was basically a roundworm in his stomach. As long as Liuli wanted to, she could directly see through Qin Guang's thoughts through the Tongtian Holy Grail. This was simply more OP than opening a map. Of course, she didn't usually have such a bad taste, but as long as she faced Qin Guang in the game, she couldn't help but become unscrupulous. Well, as long as I can play happily, it's not like I'm cheating. It's completely reasonable. Casually pushing her staff to predict and dodge Qin Guang's big move, Liuli shrugged. On the other side, Lu Fei finally broke down. She wouldn't look for the 3 shots even if she was beaten to death. Instead, she stood in front of the CK store and fiercely tore off her veil. Forget it, why the hell would she buy 3 shots? 3 shots were underwear, but CK wasn't underwear? Forget it, she'd better tell him first. Lu Fei dialed Qin Guang's number. Qin Guang, who was immersed in the grief of Jiang Luyao dodging his big move and then counterattacking with his dying blood, answered the call with an expression of eating H*T. Huh? No 3 shots. How can this be called a shopping paradise? How shameful. What did you say? What a strange English name. Where did this random brand come from? Forget it, help me buy one. I'm going to be rich soon, so I'll throw one away after wearing it. I'm too lazy to wash it. Oh right, I want a 4-cornered one. With that, Qin Guang hung up the phone with a snap. He was about to be resurrected. Lu Fei stared blankly at her phone. The busy tone kept beeping and the veins on her forehead bulged. You said CK is a random brand. A pair of underwear costs more than 600 yuan, and you're telling me it's a random brand? And you want to buy a dozen? Wear one and throw one away. My heart aches for you. I was going to pay for you, but don't blame me for being heartless. Lu Fei decisively opened her notebook and typed, 12 pairs of creek underwear, a total of 7,320 yuan. Then she walked into the store, grabbed 12 pairs and threw them on the counter. Pack them all. Lu Fei? Just then a man standing by the counter about to pay, turned his head and saw her. He exclaimed softly. Lu Fei turned to look at the man and frowned. Why did she bump into him here? He was the winner of the 4th round of Xianxia's car racing competition 2 years ago, the man who had won a total of 7 million yuan, and one of the best local drivers in Xianxiang, He Tianzhao. Chapter 233. 2 years ago when He Tianzhao was racing on the mountain track, Lu Fei was just a little girl standing on the sidelines cheering. However, because of her outstanding appearance and the 10 bodyguards sent by Uncle Qing to stand beside her, her identity seemed to be far more noble and unique than the average audience. At that time He Tianzhao was shocked by Lu Fei, a fan he met for the first time. With the power of winning the championship, he launched a fierce emotional attack on Lu Fei, who stayed in Xianxiang for a short time. However, although his driving skills were good, Lu Fei could not rise to feelings for him because of his driving skills. He thought that he was great because he could win the championship, but he never thought that he was just an ordinary person after all. Of course, in view of Lu Fei's powerful background, He Tianzhao could only pretend to be free and easy at that time, saying that she was still young, he would wait for her and so on. Lu Fei only thought that he was a joke, and her mood at that time was also very simple. I like racing and I also like to watch others race, but it doesn't mean that I have to throw myself into your arms just because you are good at racing. If you're thirsty, why don't you go look for those racing girls? What status do I have that a mere racing family dares to have thoughts about me? Of course, later facts proved that it was not that his driving skills could not move her. It was purely that He Tianzhao's driving skills were not godly enough. Like Qin Guang, he did not even say a few words to Lu Fei from the beginning, let alone take the initiative to hook up with her. As a result, when she looked at Qin Guang, her eyes were full of stars. There was no need to seduce him. He Tianzhao, on the other hand, was completely unlucky. He thought that he would never have the chance to meet Lu Fei again. After all, although he was known as the top racer in Xianxiang, compared with Lu Fei's rich family, he was still not on the same level. But he never expected that after 2 years, Lu Fei would come to Xianxiang again. Not only that, she actually became the spokesperson of a certain racer. This racer directly ran the strongest result of 139.54 yesterday. Yesterday, He Tianzhao was also one of the people who went to find Lu Fei to inquire about the news, but he was also stopped by Uncle Qing. In fact, He Tianzhao had performed quite well yesterday, driving his modified Dodge Viper to an average speed of more than 137 kilometers per hour. He was also one of the people who had broken Diesel's record. Last night he had thought that he still had a chance. He had thought that the mysterious racer might just be a racer hired by Lu Fei. Until today, when he saw Lu Fei buy men's underwear in the CK store, and a dozen at once, he felt that something was wrong. He Tianzhao? Lu Fei froze for a moment before she hurriedly picked up the CK underwear that she had carelessly thrown on the cashier counter. She looked a little embarrassed. Although he didn't have any thoughts about this person, he was at least acquainted with him. He was a little embarrassed that he had seen him buying so many men's underwear. He Tianzhao looked at Lu Fei's actions and his heart almost broke. Is this for that racer? Lu Fei subconsciously wanted to say no, but she immediately realized that the underwear scattered all over the table was obviously worn by a young man. If she didn't push it on Qin Guang's head, who should she push it on? Make up another man for yourself? Would others believe it? Useful? Why should I be afraid of He Tianzhao? She might as well go along with what he was thinking. It would also save her the trouble of this insensible guy coming over these few days. What if Qin Guang thought that she had an old lover in Xianxiang? She simply stopped panicking and shrugged indifferently. Yes, my husband doesn't like to wash it and I'm too lazy to wash it. I'll buy more at once, He Tianzhao's pupils shrank. His heart felt as if it had been whipped and he felt even more unwilling. This was a woman with a huge amount of money. When I won the championship, you didn't even spare a glance at me. But now you're still with a racer. Why? Looks like he's your sugar daddy. Based on what? He tried hard to suppress his jealousy and anger, but in the end he couldn't. Why? Lu Fei rolled her eyes. Why? You're so strange. Who are you? Do we know each other well? Do I need to ask for your permission to do anything? Although Lu Fei was usually very shy and easy to talk to in front of Qin Guang, if others dared to provoke her, she would have such a temper. With her temper, she might be considered quite good among the ladies, not to mention that she was originally a rebellious racing girl. I don't accept this. He Tianzhao was ridiculed by Lu Fei in public, but he didn't dare to really get mad at her. The bodyguards sent by Uncle Qing were already eyeing him from behind. He could only flush with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Lu Fei took her card and underwear pockets from the cashier and turned to leave. It's none of my business whether you accept it or not. I also participated in the race yesterday. I also finished 137. He Tianzhao followed behind Lu Fei and didn't buy anything. Lu Fei didn't want to pay attention to him at all. She still walked quickly with her long legs, only feeling that there was a big fly following behind her. He Tianzhao's angry voice came from far behind. Tonight I'm in the same group as your Ji. I didn't even go all out yesterday. His 139 is nothing at all. I'll make you understand. Who's the real powerful racer? I'll teach him a lesson. Listening to this person's slightly crazy tone, Lu Fei suddenly turned around, but He Tianzhao had already disappeared. Obviously, after He Tianzhao said those harsh words, he turned around and left. Lu Fei frowned slightly. She just remembered that before He Tianzhao became a racer, he was just a small henchman who fought and killed on the streets of Xianxia all day long. He was a fierce person. After becoming a racer, his status became higher, but his temper didn't change. Instead, he became even more arrogant and would do anything to achieve his goals. Because of Uncle Qing, he really didn't dare to do anything to her. But in an occasion like mountain racing, his room to play was countless times larger. After all, on a fast-moving track, no matter what happened, it could be blamed on the accident. Especially since he wasn't an ordinary racer, but a top racer in Xiangyang whose level wasn't bad. He could have used a dirty move on Qin Guang without anyone noticing. I seem to have accidentally caused trouble for Qin Guang? But something wasn't right. With He Tianzhao's character, it wouldn't matter even if she spoke to him nicely. On the contrary, He Tianzhao would take the initiative to guess that she had become Qin Guang's woman. The more she explained to him, the worse it would be. From the moment he saw her buying men's underwear in the CK store, she was destined to become like this. Lu Fei couldn't help feeling a headache. She was a little unlucky. It was all that guy's fault. He insisted on buying some 3-shot underwear. Otherwise she would have bought it and left. How could she have met this fly? Back at the hotel, Lu Fei angrily grabbed all the underwear out of her bag, raised her hand and threw them in front of Qin Guang. At this time, Qin Guang was sitting on the sofa, watching a Cantonese program with a painful expression. He had already been defeated by Jiang Luhua in 2 rounds. Alas, it's not even a 3-shot underwear. This underwear will definitely affect my performance. Qin Guang pursed his lips, grabbed a random package and tore it open. He pinched the fabric with his hand. Hey, I've never heard of this random brand, but the fabric is pretty good. It's almost the same as my favorite 3-shot underwear. CK, a luxury brand founded by Calvin Klein in 1968. The one in your hand is 610, and you bought a total of 12, totaling 73.20. Do as you see fit. When will you pay me back? Qin Guang, who was drinking water. Chapter 234. After spending a lot of effort, Qin Guang still could not recover from the pain of spending more than 7,000 to buy a dozen underwear. Looking at the pile of underwear boxes thrown all over the sofa, his heart was bleeding. Can I get a refund? Yes, but I don't have the face to go. Do you want to go yourself? Lu Fei sat down next to him, too lazy to care about him. The more she thought about how she had met He Tianzhao, the angrier she got. Qin Guang did not have the face to ask Lu Fei to pay for it. Although his heart ached, he could not cheat her of money even if she did not lack it. His hands trembled as he took out his phone. Your PayPal account. I'll transfer the money to you. Lu Fei turned to look at him. Seeing his serious and pained expression, she said, Come on, your face is almost rotten from the heartache. Let's not talk about this. I'll tell you another piece of bad news. Faster, see. What news in the world could be worse than spending more than 7,000 on a pile of underwear? I won't accept it. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. After a long time, Lu Fei finally pulled him to tell her about He Tianzhao. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang just curled his lips and shrugged. What's there to worry about? Scared me. I thought it was a big deal. He drives a Dodge Viper, right? I have an impression of that car. A naturally aspirated 8.4 LV10 engine with nearly 800 horsepower. The starting speed is fast and smooth and the explosive power is strong. But that's it. He only has one chance to get close to me. He might be faster than me at the start, but it depends on the specific position. In short, as long as I overtake him once, he can forget about getting close to me again. It's that simple. On the other hand, Qin Guang was filled with disdain for Lu Fei's actions. Thinking about it carefully, the pile of underwear hurt more. Although he was not short of money, this was not the way to spend it. If I use it sparingly, I can live for several lifetimes with tens of millions. If you keep losing like this, I'm afraid it won't last until I enter the coffin. It's not Pierre Cardin's underwear. Thank you so much. Hey, you seem to know the opponent's models like the back of your hand? Lu Fei was indescribably surprised. Seeing that he seemed to be prepared and had a card up his sleeve, she felt a little more at ease. Qin Guang shrugged. Are you kidding me? It's not like I didn't do anything in the room today. I had a hard time searching for information on the internet. You can find out the horsepower of a modified naturally aspirated engine just by looking up information. A normal naturally aspirated Dodge Viper has 654 horsepower. Lu Fei was even more surprised, wondering when her good brother had become an expert in theory. Qin Guang shrugged. Don't be infatuated with me. I'm the god of racing. I can guess 80 or 90% just by looking at the speed of the other party on the big screen. At that moment, Lu Fei's phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was from Wuxia. Sister Lu Fei, this is the information on Brother Racing God's opponent tonight. I've already sent it to Brother Racer God, so I thought I should send you one as well. Lu Fei rolled her eyes and glared at Qin Guang. She finally knew where this guy got the information from. I really don't believe you. For the entire afternoon, Qin Guang was bored to death. He couldn't continue playing games, and even if he wanted to read some physics and chemistry, he could only fantasize because he didn't bring a book. There were many Cantonese channels on the TV stations in Xianxia. The most annoying thing was that such a high-end 5-star hotel didn't have any special programs that adults liked to watch. He wanted to find something else to ambush the world in the cup, but because the next time was destined to be the world of punishment, he couldn't raise his fighting spirit. He could only walk around the room like a headless fly. From time to time he would climb onto the fitness equipment and fiddle around for a while. From time to time he would sit on the sofa and fight with Lu Fei for the remote control. Recently, a certain Korean star named Song Joong-ki had become unreasonably popular. At this time, Lu Fei was watching Descendants of the Sun, starring this young man who had made a comeback. Looking at Lu Fei staring at the beautiful mermaid lines of little brother Song who was working out on the TV, Qin Guang finally found something interesting. I don't need to say anything else. I also have fitness equipment here. I'll find a suitable reason to quickly take off my coat and show off my cool figure that's even cooler than little brother Song. Originally, I didn't want to be so coquettish. It's all your fault for daring to watch such an immodest TV series in front of me. I definitely can't tolerate it. Thinking of this, he first turned on the treadmill and adjusted it to high gear. After running for more than 10 minutes, he was really sweating profusely. Then Lord Guang naturally took off his clothes. Lu Fei turned her head and looked at his strange appearance. She almost laughed out loud. All right. Save some strength. There's still a competition tonight. What's there to see with your bony figure? Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Why was the script different from what he thought? He pointed at his trembling chest muscles. You call this ribs? Is the pig you raise so strong? Have you ever seen such a big rib? My figure isn't better than that person on TV? Lu Fei spat. What right do you have to be compared to Brother Zhongji? Qin Guang was furious. He wrapped his coat around his body. I can't be bothered with you. Then he quickly took a shower and went back to his bedroom. He slammed the door and slammed it shut. Lying on the bed, he suddenly remembered that he hadn't opened WeChat for a long time. When he opened it, there were actually dozens of messages. About 80% of them were sent by Jiang Yage. She had added some extra content to the photos, but they were barely restrained. No matter how scary the words she added were, at least this woman didn't send any large-scale private photos that could cause an accident. Speaking of which, her Photoshop skills were really improving day by day. Look at this beautiful artistic font. Later on, I can help those writers who write on Qidian to make the cover. Other than the photos, there were some other super useless things. For example, I met a 23-year-old newcomer actor today. I'm dying of laughter. He said he started watching me act on TV when he was 3 years old. Does he think I'm stupid? At that time I had just landed. I've long since stopped falling for this kind of old-fashioned pickup line. Also, I ate something delicious today. I wanted to buy some for you, but I don't have a chance to come to Wujing in the near future. It's pretty boring. Qin Guang rolled his eyes and only replied with one message. Good luck. He didn't even know what he was trying to express. Good luck. Was it her celebrity career? Or was it the size of the photos? Whatever. Looking at Jean Shiyue's few messages, it was much simpler. Jean Shiyue didn't have the habit of sharing her trivial life matters. She only sent a message. I've heard about your family. Do you need any help? This woman is really well informed. Could it be that she knows about my mother? Chapter 235. Qin Guang did not expect Jean Shiyue to take the initiative to send him a message to express her concern. Then why didn't she call me? Just as he was thinking about this, he immediately saw the next message. So the matter has been resolved, then I'm relieved. Yay, good luck. So that's how it is. Her news is really more than I imagined. Qin Guang thought about it and replied, thank you. After looking at the WeChat messages from his left and right hands, Qin Guang's mind flashed again and he decided to open Weibo to take a look. Then his brand new popcorn 6P that he was so proud of almost crashed. Faster thief. What's going on? He took a closer look and saw thousands of message notifications. Clicking on it, there were more than 3,000 likes and more than 1,000 replies. Qin Guang was shocked. Could it be that the last time he took his left and right hands for a stroll at the amusement park had been recognized? Am I going to become an internet celebrity? He took a closer look. Faster thief. The replies were getting worse and worse and all of them were cursing him. Most of them were replies to Qin Guang's previous comment on Jiang Yage's Weibo. Obviously, the people who liked the post had malicious intentions. They wanted to frame him up. Hey, didn't I just complain? Is there a need to be so evil? You guys are so free all day long. Resisting the urge to delete the Weibo post, Qin Guang read the replies one by one and finally understood why his mild comment was framed. Jiang Yage's eyes are 2F** king sharp. She actually liked my post. Are you reminding your fans to focus their firepower? Even if I hide in your tens of thousands of replies and slander you a little, you can still find me. How free do you have to be? Returning to his homepage, perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. He actually gained more than 900 fans in one go. It seemed that they were all here for Jiang Yage's praise. The Weibo post that Qin Guang had posted 4 months ago, in addition to Sun Xiaoxuan's reply, was filled with replies from Jiang Yage's crazy fans. Most of them weren't pleasant to hear, and there were more than 200 of them. There might be paparazzi hiding in there, but it didn't matter. Jiang Yage had only liked one of her Weibo posts. No one could dig anything out. By Nyangzi, the B** even hid in the middle and replied with a meaningful hee-hee. His invisible pretense was the deadliest. Just as Qin Guang was refreshing the page, ding-dang. The total number of fans had exceeded 1,000. Qin Guang pursed his lips. Alright, even if I become an internet celebrity as a hater of Jiang Yage, it's not a bad choice. My fans are all living people. If he had tens of thousands of followers, he would be able to accept advertisements. Should I say a few more insults later? And then let Jiang Yage scold him? Thinking about it carefully, as long as he could survive, he might really become an internet celebrity. While scrolling through Weibo, he caught a glimpse of the news of the Xianxia car gambling competition last night. Although this kind of competition couldn't be seen in public, it still had a certain range of influence on Weibo. At least, Qin Guang took the lead last night to break the record of the top car King Diesel 4 years ago, which had been hyped up by many people in the underground racing circle. When he clicked on the text, Qin Guang broke out in a cold sweat. There was a photo of the matte GTR speeding from the front. Obviously, it was a screenshot of the race organizer from the video taken by the high-speed camera. However, these high-speed cameras couldn't have their own flash system. Otherwise, it would be a trap for the driver. Therefore, although the matte GTR in the picture looked clear, Qin Guang, who was sitting in the driver's seat, was completely dark, so he didn't have to worry about being recognized. However, Qin Guang was careful. He quickly took out the soft mask he got last night from the box next to him and put it on his face. He stood in front of the mirror and looked at himself. He was satisfied. He didn't know which master in Xianxia made this soft mask. The material was quite exquisite. Wearing it on his face, not only did it not feel suffocating, but it also gave him a cool feeling. The material was light and soft. If it weren't for the smiling face of the Secret Service team in the mirror, Qin Guang would almost think that he wasn't wearing a mask. Not only did it not affect his vision, but the opening of the nose and mouth were also unique. It didn't destroy the overall artistic feeling of the mask, and it also made Qin Guang speak without any difficulty. What a cool chat. Okay, from the moment I go out, I won't take off this mask. Uncle Qing came over at about 4 o'clock. When he saw Qin Guang, he said with a smile, "Little brother, did you sleep with cash last night?" Qin Guang jumped back. Is it possible that this big boss is interested in the real money that the old man risked his life for? This is a big shot who was shot in the throat. Can I leave this hotel alive? Lu Fei patted Qin Guang's head behind him. What are you afraid of? Uncle Qing wants to help you. You can't always walk around with a big box, can you? You have to take at least 3 boxes later. Qin Guang shrugged. 7. Uncle Qing didn't want to waste time with this group of young people. He waved his hand and said, "Little brother, give me the cash and give me your bank account number. I will ask someone to transfer it to you from my private account. In this way no one can find your trace." "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you." Qin Guang was extremely embarrassed. $1,000,000 was nothing in her eyes. Originally, Qin Guang planned to go out at 6 o'clock, but Lu Fei insisted that he leave 2 hours earlier. The reason was very simple. Lu Fei's original words were as follows. You should be a little more familiar with the track. Be a little more serious. The group first went to Aujia's modification factory. Aujia was checking the engine compartment of the Mat GTR, afraid that something would go wrong. Hearing someone behind him, he looked back and found that Qin Guang was wearing a soft mask on his face. Obviously, he had no intention of taking it off. Aujia completely understood that this man was planning to play mysterious until the end. He was glad that he had kept his mouth shut yesterday. He hurriedly told everyone the story he had made up last night as if he was asking for credit. Qin Guang commented, "Exaggerated, too exaggerated. If you boast too much, others won't believe you." Lu Fei stepped on Aujia's foot again. "That's right. You might as well just say that I'm a gigolo kept by Lu Fei and that I can't be seen. That way the credibility will be at least 80% higher. Get lost." Lu Fei was furious. About 15 minutes later, the Mat GTR finally reappeared on the mountain track after disappearing for most of the day. Some drivers or fans who had arrived early were so excited that they hurriedly followed. In any case, this car was last night's temporary champion. They hurriedly followed behind him to learn his skills. Every little bit counts. You think you can keep up with Brother Racing God's car? Dream on. Lu Fei regained her ability to roast them. 10 minutes later, Lu Fei began to yawn violently. "I say, why don't you drive faster? What's the big deal about the entire journey of 60 kilometers per hour? What's the meaning of stopping at every turn?" Behind the black Mat GTR, there was a long line of cars that was about 300 meters long. A large group of people were yawning madly, their eyes still drowsy. It was too boring. Could this person be toying with us? Is the driver the same as yesterday? These people were a little drunk. You're the new record holder of the mountain track. Are you humiliating us by running like this? But gradually, some smart people finally reacted. This guy is familiarizing himself with the track. *CK. You ran 139.54 kilometers last night. Now you're telling us that you're familiarizing yourself with the track. That's too much. Chapter 236. You're not humiliating us. You're humiliating all the racers you killed last night. Qin Guang didn't think that much. There were many reasons why he could drive the magically modified Alto steadily at 400 kilometers per hour in the Racing Gods training ground. First, it was the bug in the strengthening parameters. Second, it was because he had died so many times that he knew the route like the back of his hand. He had to remember it. If he didn't, he would die in minutes. The reason why he stopped at every corner was that he had to remember the characteristics of all the corners. From the angle of the turn, to the change in the inclination of the road, to the difference in the width of the yellow line on both sides of the road, he had to memorize all of it. It seemed that no one could pose a threat to him now. God knew what would happen when he entered the battle to protect the car. So the racing god Qin Guang got serious. Regardless of how Lu Fei ridiculed him, Qin Guang did not speak a single word from the start to the end. Every single time he stopped at a bend, he would only turn his head and squint his eyes like a scanner, taking in the entire situation at the bend. Gradually Lu Fei stopped talking. Qin Guang was serious. Although she couldn't see his face through the mask, his eyes were so handsome. Finally, when it was 7:30, both the racers and the fans arrived one after another. There seemed to be more people than yesterday. At least there were about 3,000 more people in the parking lot of the starting point. Apart from these ordinary fans, there was another group of people who stood out. Even though there were only a dozen people in casual clothes, both the fans and the racers couldn't help but look in that direction. No one would have thought that on the second day of the race there would be a new king. And there were two of them. The king of Thailand, Wu Panjunyo, 21 years old. 5 years ago, at the age of 16, he had become famous in the Paris race. So far he was the youngest king in history. He was called the Dark Knight Demon. He had mastered the strange drifting and cornering technique. He often overtook his opponents when they weren't paying attention. Back in the Paris auto racing competition, it was only when he won the final victory and was about to take away 7 luxury cars that people suddenly realized that this slender man who was as beautiful as a woman was already the king of cars of the day. The second was the king of Japan, Ryuichi Takahashi. He was the absolute overlord of the Tokyo auto racing competition 6 years ago. Nicknamed the Burning God of War, he was the world's best racer at driving a GTR. His master once drove the first-generation GTR 32 to slaughter his peers in the formal European arena. Although he was a famous master, he did not choose to become a registered official player. Instead, he threw himself into the underground racing without hesitation and eventually surpassed his master to become the recognized king of cars. The students surpassed the master. Interesting. Ryuichi Takahashi, this newcomer chose GTR just like you. Wu Panjunyo shook his unique sharp voice and said with a faint smile. Ryuichi Takahashi smiled confidently. Of course, because the GTR is the most perfect racing car in the world. If it weren't for those despicable Europeans, my master would have dominated the racing world. Really? Wu Panjunyo was no longer interested in talking to this nationalist. If Ryuichi Takahashi knew that Qin Guang drove a GTR only because it was not his own car at all. He drove whatever car Wang Qing gave him. Even if Wang Qing took out a magically modified Jetta, Qin Guang would still accept it. Thankfully, if it were not auto, Ryuichi Takahashi would not be able to show off. Don, can you take me there? I've seen his video. This newcomer is really strong. I want to chat with him. Wu Panjunyo turned his head and said to his driver Yuan, who was the champion of last year's Xianxia auto racing competition. Yuan thought for a moment. I can only try. He doesn't seem to like contacting outsiders. The middle-aged man sitting next to the GTR is our Mr. Tang from Xianxia. He has a very high status. He is a big shot who is specially escorting him. Wu Panjunyo raised his eyebrows. Interesting, even more interesting. It's not impossible to say hello, right? Let's go. Let's try. Yuan had no choice but to bring Wu Panjunyo to Qin Guang's direction. Before the two of them got close, they were stopped by Uncle Cheng's bodyguards. However, as the champion of last year's race, Yuan was a little famous in the local area. One of the bodyguards knew Yuan and asked him politely what he was doing here. Yuan pointed to Wu Panjunyo behind him. This is Thailand's racer king, Mr. Wu Panjunyo. He wants to talk to the driver in this GTR. The bodyguard could not make up his mind. After thinking for a while, he asked Lu Fei for her opinion. Thailand's racer king wants to talk to you. Are you interested? Lu Fei turned to ask Qin Guang. In fact, she was very excited. The former racer king was unattainable and arrogant. Qin Guang had only finished the first round and he actually took the initiative to talk to him. The racer king was indeed the racer king. He could immediately see how good Qin Guang was and took the initiative to talk to him. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang pouted. What's there to talk about? I'm not interested. Huh. Is that so? Lu Fei was a little disappointed. She turned to look out the window intending to say goodbye to the bodyguard. Just then Qin Guang finally turned his head to the side and widened his eyes. Faster see. The beauty. The Racer King. This girl, why are you so cool? Wait a minute. Of course I want to see. Ah. Alright, I give up. Lu Fei's head was about to explode from his capriciousness. When she turned around and saw his shining eyes, she understood and almost laughed out loud. As a racing fan, Lu Fei had heard of Wu Pan Juanyao's deeds. Mr. Wu Pan, you really have a lot of influence. Hearing that they were allowed to go over, Yuan was delighted. Wu Pan Junyao smiled charmingly. Of course, I'm the Racer King after all. What are you going to say to him? I haven't thought about it yet. I'll just give him some encouragement. The two walked straight to the GTR's right door. On the other side, Qin Guang had already rolled down the car's window. He used the nightlight to size up the girl outside and secretly commented. He really did not expect that there was a woman in this world who could be the Racer King. She was too beautiful. Look at her small eyes and sharp oval face. It looked like it was carved out with a knife. Her figure was great too. But would her chest be flat? Forget it. Being flat had its benefits. How could one rule the world if one's chest was flat? Oh. Qin Guang took the initiative to greet him in English. Wu Pan Junyao stood by the car door and smiled. Oh. Do you have any advice? Qin Guang said with a chuckle, wiping away the saliva that almost leaked out from the corner of his mouth. Wu Pan Junyao gently flipped his hair and pressed both hands on Qin Guang's car door. He smiled even more brightly. I have high hopes for you. You must enter the battle to protect the car. Don't let me not even have a chance to appear. Chapter 237. Qin Guang reacted quickly and reached out to grab Wu Pan Junyao's hand from above. Of course. Usually Qin Guang wasn't such a frivolous and daring person, but today Master Guang's decisiveness had been influenced by the outside world. Of course he didn't think of guarding against it at all and let the sluggishness intensify. Besides, he felt that girls who liked to race cars were quite generous. As the king of cars, this Thai girl must be the most open-minded. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had to take advantage of her. Wu Pan Juanyao's snow-white face blushed when Qin Guang suddenly grabbed his hand. He forced a smile and said, "Then I'll wait for your good news." With that he pulled his hand away and turned to leave. After watching the beautiful king of cars walk away, Qin Guang wound up the car window and turned back to Lu Fei. This girl is really pretty. The skin on the back of her hand is really soft. It's just that her voice is a little hoarse and sounds androgynous. I'm not spouting nonsense, but she's like you, Lu Fei, a perfect goddess. Sigh, if it weren't for the fact that I'm not interested in racing cars, it would be quite exciting to have the opportunity to form a King of Cars team with her. Lu Fei slapped Qin Guang's head. King of Cars, my ass. He should be the King of Cars. I'm a guy. What? A guy? That's right. A real man. Thailand's King of Cars, hee. What the hell? Master Guang felt nauseous. He looked down at his hands, which still smelled of perfume. I want to die. I feel terrible. I want to chop my hands off. I actually pinched this damn sissy's hand. And I even pinched him until his face turned red. Damn it. He can't have fallen for me, right? I'm starting to panic. Lu Fei. I don't want to live anymore. Lend me your thigh and let me cry. With that, Qin Guang turned and pounced on Lu Fei's thigh. Lu Fei was caught off guard. Hey. Cry all you want. Lend me your thigh all you want. Why is your right hand grabbing my chest? You shoved your left hand under my butt again. I touched something impure just now. I need to touch the goddess with full marks to resist this evil power. Otherwise, I'll definitely lose today. Lu Fei, you have to help me. You're a goddess with full marks. That damn sissy just now is poisonous. Lu Fei had seen many shameless people, but she had never seen someone as shameless as this. However, in her heart she was not against Qin Guang's shamelessness. She only turned her head away with a red face. Looking at the similarly crazy men and women outside the window, a strange feeling welled up in her heart. She was exceptionally shy, yet she was reluctant to let go of his demonic hands. Forget it, I thought about massaging his chest yesterday anyway. Let him pinch me a little, I won't lose a piece of flesh. When he's tired of pinching me, he'll let go. Don't put your hand in there. 25 minutes later. Ruffy was almost out of breath. It's almost time for the competition. You are in the first group. Get up. Time was running out and everyone had already gotten into position. Qin Guang reluctantly let Lu Fei out of the car. When she finally closed the door, Qin Guang clenched his fist. Awesome. Yesterday's butt. Today's chest. Tomorrow's upgrade. Lu Fei was not the only one planning this. Qin Guang had planned this from the beginning too. What a shameless pair of adulterers. F***CK. Why am I number 5? This is F***King cheating. When Qin Guang was directed by the competition referee to get into position, he saw his queue number and was stunned. Also, was this Dodge Viper next to him the bastard that Ruffy mentioned yesterday? Wasn't he running 137 yesterday? He was also next to me. The higher the first round, the more he would be pushed to the last 3 rows. Turning his head, Qin Guang smiled again. Fortunately, the McLaren 675 that was eating his dust yesterday was even worse off. He was already in the 4th row. Speaking of which, was the guy driving the Viper sick? What was he trying to say by rolling down the window? It was very noisy outside. Tianzhao, who was in the Viper, was angrily waving his arms and legs at him, cursing and swearing. However, Qin Guang did not roll down the window so he could not hear what the guy was saying. Forget it. He was so enthusiastic, so I can't just stand by and do nothing. Qin Guang only smiled at him and gave him the middle finger. Courtesy demanded reciprocity. F***CK. Tianzhao originally wanted to provoke Qin Guang before the race and launch a psychological attack. In the end, Qin Guang did not respond at all and even gave him the middle finger. Seeing that the guy next to him was so angry that he was slapping the steering wheel, Qin Guang laughed again and turned his head to look ahead. He ignored him and let him be. Speaking of which, there was another girl in front of the starting line today. She was a girl with long black hair that suited his taste. Although her figure was not as good as the girl from yesterday, she still looked like a first-class model, especially with her long black hair that reached her waist like a waterfall. She was really beautiful. She looked noble and elegant, but unfortunately she was still a bit loose in her bones. He was too generous. No matter what others thought, the old man could not accept his own woman being taken advantage of by others. However, on second thought, the old man was that other person now. Don't worry about who will be the one to take over her in the future. Let the old man feast his eyes first. Could it be that every group had a different type of boob-slinging girl? I missed 7 yesterday. My heart hurts. That's not right. I can't show my face. I can't stand outside with a mask on. If I wear a mask, I will be surrounded at any moment. Thinking about this, my heart hurts even more. There should be a full recording of this race. When I get back, I will ask Lu Fei to help me make a full set. Don't worry about the race, just keep a small part of the highlights. That's right. Let's do this. If others knew that the racing god of this generation, who was destined to be admired by tens of thousands of people, was only thinking about that girl who had exposed her chest in front of everyone when they set off, would those racing fans cover their faces in misery and feel ashamed for him and themselves? However, Qin Guang did not have much time to let his imagination run wild. The race was about to begin. It was different from yesterday. At that time, no one thought that the driver in this Matt GTR was so amazing. But today, when the 8 mechanical beasts roared together and madly rushed forward, at least half of the people on the sidelines had their eyes on Qin Guang's car. Regardless of whether the other drivers were convinced or not, they could not hide the fact that he ran at his best yesterday. Qin Guang did not care so much. His movements were smooth and natural. Because of the right-hand steering wheel, his start yesterday was not very good. Today it was much easier and more familiar. In the flow of traffic, Qin Guang, who was originally lagging behind, was the first to suddenly speed up and go straight to the Audi R8 in front of him. Thanks to the powerful performance that Wang Qing had spent tens of millions of yuan on, the violent 800 horsepower V12 quickly pulled to the limit to provide strong torque, coupled with the assistance of the ultra-lightweight carbon fiber body, and Qin Guang's instantaneous continuous gear changes after 2.5 seconds, Qin Guang suddenly increased the speed to 100 km per hour. Not only that, he did not reduce the gear but still violently hit the accelerator. He let the tachometer rush into the red zone. The number 5 matte black GTR was extremely crazy and violent from the beginning. The front of the car chased after the R8's tail. Everyone looked at this car with their mouths wide open. This lunatic. How can you speed up like this from the beginning? Your speed is indeed better than the Audi R8 in front of you, but are you not afraid of crashing into it? There are 2 cars in front of you. There is no space to overtake at all. At the same time, He Tianzhao, who was speeding up step by step in the Dodge Viper, was also shocked by the situation on his left. He thought to himself, this guy wants to get rid of me at the beginning? Dream on. Chapter 238. Number 5 GTR is speeding up. It just started and it's speeding up like crazy. It's relying on its performance to overtake the R8 and 911 in front. It's going to crash. Mr. X was indeed an experienced commentator. He had seen through Qin Guang's thoughts the moment Qin Guang started speeding up, and he spoke very quickly. But his words were still filled with disbelief. Such strong cars relying on their performance to overtake weaker cars usually only happened in the middle and late stages of a race. At the start, everyone would be squeezed together. It was obvious that they wanted to crash and forfeit the race. Before Mr. X finished speaking, the Dodge Viper on the other side of Qin Guang did the same thing. The Viper's 780 horsepower naturally aspirated engine might not be as strong and durable as the V12 turbocharged engine in the middle and late stages of acceleration, but at the starting stage of linear acceleration, it relied on its 8.4L displacement to obtain a terrifying propulsion force. The Viper is also speeding up. In the car, Qin Guang glanced at He Tianzhao's actions from the corner of his eye. He was unmoved and the corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. So he really wants to teach me a lesson? Going against me from the start? Then come. Qin Guang's right hand suddenly exerted force, and the steering wheel swung half a circle to the left. At the moment when he was about to hit the rear of the R8, he suddenly changed direction in the traffic flow to the left sideline. He was going to overtake from the left. Almost at the same time, the Dodge Viper changed to the right. He was also going to overtake the Porsche 911 in front from the right. The fight on the mountain road had reached its climax in less than 5 seconds from the start of the race. Were these 2 people crazy? Everyone's mind was turning over the same thought at the same time. Even the drivers, Yuan and Wu Panjunyao, had their eyelids twitching, let alone the others. Lu Fei's whole body was tense. Of course, she knew that Qin Guang's driving skills were good, but she had never seen such an intense fight that was close to risking one's life. From her point of view, Qin Guang's biggest advantage was that he could rely on his perfect control of the bends to leave others in the dust. His advantage definitely did not include this kind of situation where he would fly off the track with just a touch. The GTR and Python are about to overtake each other from both sides at the same time. Were they trying to turn the 2-lane road into a 4-lane road? The R8 and 911 were under immense pressure. They began to move closer to the center. However, there's only a little more than 2 meters of space left for the GTR and Python. Madman. Everyone today is a lunatic. Mr. X couldn't calm down at all as he roared. On the other side, Qin Guang and He Tianzhao simultaneously drove their cars into the gap between the cars in front and the edge of the road. At the same time, he switched to third gear and increased his speed crazily. Compared to these two, the R8 and 911 that were sandwiched in the middle were in an awkward position. Not only were their routes taken away, but their speed was also completely inferior. It was almost as if they were standing still. However, in reality, both of them were moving at almost 150 kilometers per hour. The slightest carelessness and a collision would result in the destruction of the car and the death of the passengers. To Qin Guang's left was the edge of the road. The trees by the roadside were so close that they seemed to be within reach. His eyes were extremely focused. A third of the left tire was already suspended above the drainage ditch. Finally, there was a burst of flame from his exhaust pipe, and the car's speed increased again. He overtook the car at close to 200 kilometers per hour. On the other side, the Dodge Python relied on a stronger thrust to quickly increase its speed to 220 kilometers per hour, and successfully overtook Qin Guang. In less than 10 seconds after the race started, the third and fourth, fifth and sixth places had changed positions. What a crazy guy. Ryoichi Takahashi had a charming smile on his face as he said to the short and fat Japanese man beside him, "Naoki, this Jeter racer reminds me of a friend from many years ago." "Who? Fujihara-kun. Is that so?" On the other side, Ayuan looked disdainfully at the fans who were heaving a sigh of relief. These people are making a fuss out of nothing. He's just relying on the car's power to overtake. The Amaterasu is running pretty well too. Wu Pan Junyao shook his head slightly. "Ayuan, can you calculate the width of the GTR and the space left for him by the R8? Just now the GTR had at most half of its tires suspended. Although your friend's maneuver looks equally thrilling, there's a protective fence on his right side, there's no drainage ditch." Ayuan was speechless. On the other side, Lu Fei yanked Ajie's collar. "Ajie, tell me, how's the anti-collision performance of this GTR?" Ajie's expression changed as he said in embarrassment. In order to reduce the weight and improve the acceleration, the anti-collision performance was not specially strengthened. However, part of the car body was replaced with high-strength carbon fiber, and the overall strength was improved to a certain extent, but not much compared to the original. You know, although carbon fiber is strong, it's not as tough as steel. Lu Fei let go of his grip and shook Ajie off. She frowned as she looked at the GTR on the big screen, which had just been pushed to the back by He Tianzhao. Her eyes were filled with unspeakable worry. Qin Guang was only occasionally crazy, but He Tianzhao's running style was famous for being arrogant. Now that he had overtaken Qin Guang was in danger. "If anything happens to him, I want He Tianzhao's life. No matter what the reason is. There's no need for any unnecessary explanations." Lu Fei turned her head and said softly to Uncle Qing beside her. Uncle Qing nodded, indicating that he understood. Ajie, who was standing beside the two of them, listened with trepidation. On the other side, Qin Guang and He Tianzhao were fighting in the third and fourth positions. Qin Guang had tried to use the bends to overtake the GTR, but the Viper was also famous for being the king of bends. He Tianzhao's level was not bad and he had purposely taken the road, so he had managed to overtake Qin Guang until the 7th consecutive bend. Following closely behind Qin Guang and He Tianzhao was a Subaru Winged Leopard WC that had also broken Diesel's record the day before. Although this car was not expensive, it had great potential for modification. This was not an ordinary Winged Leopard. The modifier had put in a lot of effort, and it had long been trained to be a road beast with outstanding performance. The two people in front were fighting, but the Winged Leopard driver was not in a hurry. He just steadily followed behind them, maintaining his 5th position. It was not that he did not want to overtake, but that the two people in front were too crazy. He did not want to act rashly and get himself into trouble for no reason. Actually, the ones who were the most flustered were the Jaguar and Mercedes-Benz SLS drivers who were running at the front. Yesterday the two of them had barely managed to maintain their top 4 positions, and today was the reason why they were in the front row. After witnessing the collective explosion of the top racers yesterday, the two of them did not have much hope for today's second round. In the end, they were followed by 2 crazy people today. One was the best racer from yesterday and the other was also in the top 3. The two in front were secretly relieved. If it was not for the Viper and GTR entangling each other, they would have been overtaken long ago. Whether it was the Benz or the vehicle's performance, they were completely outclassed. It was only a matter of time before they were overtaken. Even if they managed to take the lead on the uphill section, they would not be able to hold on for the second half of the downhill section. They were just afraid that the two of them would be as unreasonable when they overtook them as when they started off. Suddenly, the engine behind them roared again as if it was overloaded. 7 consecutive bends. In front of them was that scary Z-bend. The 2 crazy people behind them finally could not hold back. Chapter 239. The Forest Viper is about to make a move. Your friend is quite daring. Wu Pan Junyao said to Ayuan with a smile as he looked at the image that flashed across the huge screen. Ayuan nodded. The GTR's performance at the Z-turn yesterday was indeed amazing. However, He Tianzhao was a local racer from Xianxia and would come to the mountain track almost every day. The Z-turn was also his specialty. The Jaguar slowed down to 100 km/h before entering the turn, and the Asus behind it also slowed down. He Tianzhao controlled his speed to close to 100 kilometers per hour. He overtook the SLS from the inside. Qin Guang followed closely behind. The SLS racer lost the inside line. If he did not slow down, he might hit the fence. He could only slow down again. F***ck. He cursed angrily, but it was meaningless. In the blink of an eye, the Forest Viper and GTR overtook the SLS from the inside line. There was only one Jaguar left in front of them. After rushing out of the first Z-turn, both of them hit the accelerator at the same time and rushed into the second turn. He Tianzhao's speed was controlled at around 105 kilometers per hour. It was not as fast as Qin Guang yesterday, but it was still faster than the Jaguar's speed of 100 kilometers per hour. He sped up easily and got into the Jaguar's inside line. Qin Guang's car maintained a distance of less than a decimeter from the Python. The two of them, one at the front and one at the back, were at nearly the same angle as they forcefully drifted on the inner lane and crossed the middle lane of the drifting Jaguar. First and second. Beautiful. Great job, Tenzhou. Yuan and He Tianzhao were both Xianxia racers. Naturally, they would cheer for their teammate. Wu Pan Junyao squinted his eyes. Yuan, you're wrong. It's not your friend who's really good. It's the jeter. Why? Yuan did not understand. You know, when two cars are drifting side by side, the most difficult part is not the car in front but the car behind. A collision will happen if you're not careful. But look at the distance between the GTR and the Forest Viper. It doesn't change at all during the drift. Such accuracy is already at the millimeter level. Even among the top 10 racers, there are less than 5 who can do this. Of course, those who can't do this are not bad. It's just that everyone has a different style. Mr. Wu Pan, can you do that? No problem. Finally, the second round of the competition became a duel between Qin Guang and He Tianzhao. Who will win? This question was asked by Mr. X on the commentary platform. However, no one laughed at his unprofessionalism. In terms of pure average speed, yesterday's GTR was 139.54, and He Tianzhao's result was above 137. Looking at the whole process, it seemed that there was a huge difference. However, in this kind of competition where people were chasing and overtaking each other, the competition was not just about absolute speed. Fighting and killing each other was the real theme, not to mention that He Tianzhao was currently in the lead. If the slightest detail was not handled properly, it could lead to the car crashing and people dying. The car racing competition wasn't just a competition of absolute speed. More importantly, it was a competition of courage and mental quality. If you can find a suitable opportunity to surpass your opponent quickly, accurately and ruthlessly, then from then on, you can fly as high as a bird in the sky. However, if you can't rush over or get stuck when trying to overtake, then you can't blame others. And He Tianzhao was famous in Xianxia not only for his absolute speed, but also for his ruthlessness and quick reflexes in this kind of chase and battle. Wanting to overtake his car was known to be harder than ascending to heaven. Even the helicopter in midair no longer paid attention to the people behind. The giant screen was the scene of Qin Guang driving the GTR and biting the back of the Dodge Viper. Lu Fei was nervous again. If Qin Guang was another opponent, she might not panic at all, but this He Tianzhao was a lunatic. Normally he might be afraid of her and be relatively restrained, but Lu Fei, who also raced, knew that when the speed reached a certain limit, the burning passion of racing could ignite all the rationality of the driver. At this time he would become incomparably dangerous. Qin Guang, what are you thinking at this time? Don't be silly. You must find an opportunity to overtake again. Lu Fei could not help but guess so. On the other side, Qin Guang felt a little bored. He yawned, squinted his eyes, swung his hand and made another perfect and smooth turn. How could such a beautiful person be a boy? It's really a pity. I'm also stupid. When I heard that bastard was some Thai car king, I should have thought of it long ago. I must keep this matter to myself. It's too king shameful. Speaking of which, Lu Fei's body was really great. It was big, round and elastic, almost comparable to a volleyball. Her face was also very beautiful, no wonder the grandson in front liked her. But so what? Are you half as handsome as me? Then she would tilt her head and glance at the rearview mirror. Once she saw my handsome face, she would be fascinated by herself. What a terrifying fight. He Tianzhao is worthy of being called the half-mountain killer. His snatching position is extremely fierce. He suppressed the GTR at the back without a chance, The GTR that showed us its peak speed yesterday was completely suppressed by him. Of course, the GTR didn't give up the opportunity either. From the beginning to the end, it was biting tightly behind Python. Every minute and every second was so thrilling and exciting, as though a violent collision would happen in the next moment. The first half of the uphill segment is about to end. Let's see the average speed of both parties, 113. Such an intense competition, both parties' speeds are shockingly fast. It's on par with the GTR's solo lead yesterday. It's about to enter an even more terrifying downhill segment. These two lunatics, it's either you die or I live. This is a battlefield. A battlefield that belongs to the racers. Mr. X's voice was still full of passion, inciting people's fear. Listening to his commentary, be it the spectating racers or the fans, they all broke into a cold sweat for the two of them. He Tianzhao slightly arched his back and stared straight ahead, then quickly drifted away. His eyes were focused on the GTR behind him, his eyes were bloodshot, flashing with madness. He kept muttering to himself, "Come on. Come on. I'm going to send you to hell. Brat, do you feel despair?" Chen Guang, who was at the back, yawned again, his left hand wiping away the tears squeezed out from his eyes. "I'm almost done playing. That D*Ned sissy hurt me quite a bit. Speaking of which, will I be able to stick my head in tomorrow? I'm looking forward to it just thinking about it. Let's take down that idiot in front, the V-shaped bend in front. Bastard, don't slow down if you have the guts." Then he suddenly sat up straight and sped up. He Tianzhao slightly cut into the inner lane, intending to slow down and enter the bend, because he knew that it was an almost 180-degree V-shaped bend in front of him. However, from the corner of his eyes, he suddenly saw the GTR behind him speeding up to shorten the distance between them. What is this guy trying to do? This is the downhill segment. You still dare to speed up? At this moment, the GTR suddenly moved to the right, trying to overtake from the outer lane. Dream on. Without thinking, He Tianzhao also pulled the steering wheel to the right. He did not intend to leave any gap for the GTR. Slow down obediently. Despair. He Tianzhao smirked and looked at the rearview mirror, only to realize that there was nothing behind him. Chapter 240. At that moment, He Tianzhao first heard a strange sound from the left side of his back, followed by a click and the car vibrating slightly. Then he heard the roar of the engine from his left side. He turned his head but could only see the right side of the GTR. In that short moment, the matte black beast had rushed in front of him. He was overtaken. What the hell happened? He Tianzhao was at a loss. The countless spectators and racers who were watching this scene through the giant screen projection were equally shocked. At that moment, the GTR made a feint, pretending to use the bend to overtake the car on the outside line. Then, when the Viper changed to the outside line, he slammed on the brakes and turned the front of the car behind the Viper. Then he sped up and changed lanes at the same time, speeding up while cutting into the inside line. The front of the GTR and the rear of the Viper were getting closer as he sped up. The moment he cut into the inside line, they collided. Sparks flew. Maybe it was an accident, or maybe it was within the GTR's driver's expectations, but the slight collision did not affect his speed at all. Then he completely took over the inside line. He used a higher speed to overtake the car on the yellow line. He Tianzhao roared, "I won't let you succeed." As he roared, he sped up and forced the front of the car onto the inside line. But it was too late. His speed was too fast and he could no longer take over the inside line. "I can't even stand on the inside line. You're at least 140 kilometers per hour. Let's see how you cross the bend. Just wait for your death." He Tianzhao tried his best to control the car and looked coldly at the GTR in front of him. What? Why is it the side? He's facing me?" In front of him, Qin Guang's GTR had already turned sideways. It was almost at a right angle to the road. He wanted to cross the V-shaped bend at 140 kilometers per hour. That was the only way. That was to directly drift across with inertia, and when drifting halfway, forcibly use the momentum to provide a forward thrust to straighten the path. This was inertial drift. It's actually inertial drift. The feint he made earlier wasn't just to deceive me, it was also to adjust the car's position before the inertial drift. He Tianzhao felt a chill run down his spine. He had been completely fooled. Up ahead, Qin Guang's rear end first swung past the sharp end of the V-shaped curve. Then, the front of the car cut across the curve, and the car continued to drift sideways towards the fence next to the curve. But just as the car was about to hit the fence, the abundant power finally pulled the car back. There was only a series of dazzling sparks on the railing before he completely straightened the front of the car and accelerated. Charge. With an indomitable aura, Qin Guang snatched first place for the first time. No. He Tianzhao roared crazily. He would never accept such a clean defeat. Lu Fei. I said that I would teach this person a lesson. I'm going to knock him off the cliff. He Tianzhao gritted his teeth and sped up again. This time he only wanted to charge at the GTR's tail. He wanted to hit the GTR's tail when it made a turn and make the GTR completely lose control. But how was that possible? Qin Guang had had enough. He was a little unhappy that he had been overtaken in the first half of the race. Now that he had finally familiarized himself with the track, he couldn't possibly be worse than yesterday, right? I'll just be a little more serious. I'll run an average speed of 145 kilometers per hour today. The next curve was supposed to be an ordinary C-shaped curve, but Qin Guang suddenly used the amazing divine drift that he had seen yesterday. It was as accurate as a machine and as stable as Mount Tai. It was just right and flawless. The car was completely stuck to the side of the curve and the speed was pushed to the limit. He forcefully made the turn at a terrifying speed of 150 kilometers per hour again. The weeds growing under the guardrail were crushed, but the distance between the car and the guardrail was precisely controlled at 3 millimeters, without the slightest deviation. He Tianzhao only wanted to crash into it, but he realized in despair that the GTR was getting further and further away from him. The divine drift at the Z-shaped curve yesterday wasn't a coincidence. This was the scene that gave the audience in front of the giant screen the most impact. Then he made another 2 consecutive hairpin turns. Before the audience could recover from the shock of the C-shaped curve, he continued to drift to the side without slowing down. They were devastated. There was actually someone in the world who could drive a car to such an extent. To be able to control this crazy sprinting machine as precisely as a human's fingers? Me. No. I give up. This is my home track. He Tianzhao went completely crazy. He had never experienced such a desperate race. The GTR was like a black devil quickly devouring him. His dignity as a racer, his pride as a man, was being crushed bit by this person. The taillights of the GTR seemed to be laughing at his eyes coldly. He was so indignant and resentful. This level of drifting. I can do it too. Different from usual, he Tianzhao also pulled the speed to 150 kilometers per hour when he entered the curve. He was going all out. He believed that he could do what the GTR could do and he had to do it. Then the front of his car slammed into the guardrail. The car suddenly lost its balance and swung violently, spinning several times in the middle of the road. The rear of the car slammed into the side of the mountain and finally stopped. He Tianzhao tilted his neck, which was almost broken, and stared at the GTR in front of him, which was continuously swerving through an S-curve on the downhill road. He was in despair. He unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the car door with great difficulty and flipped out of the car. He fell head first into the gutter and looked up at the broken front axle. His heart was filled with sadness. He could only withdraw from the race. When Qin Guang really finished the whole race at an average speed of 145 kilometers per hour, he disappeared into the darkness again under the protection of the organizing committee's security personnel. More than 50,000 people on the huge mid-mountain racetrack were silent, staring at the data displayed on the giant screen with their mouths agape, unable to speak for a long time. Total time: 7 minutes 25 seconds 88 seconds. Average speed: 145. 33 seconds. What was going on with this world? Was the mid-mountain racetrack secretly widened? Speaking of which, his time in the first half of the uphill road was the same as yesterday and he was still entangled with Python. Did that mean that he only sped up in the second half of the race and then he broke the record? The news of the GTR familiarizing itself with the track this afternoon, along with the power of another new record, gradually spread among the crowd. This group of people was even more confused. In other words, yesterday was that person's first time running the mid-mountain racetrack? Today, after familiarizing himself with the track, he exerted himself in the second half of the race. and ran an average speed of 145. 33? What kind of joyful racing was that? Was he driving a GTR or an F1? Lu Fei smiled brightly, especially when she saw He Tianzhao's miserable state. She felt even more comfortable. Previously she was still regretting that the last 4 places in the same group as Qin Guang did not have a valuable car. Now He Tianzhao's Dodge Viper, which cost a lot of money to modify and was worth a lot, had withdrawn from the race. Needless to say, Jenny Turtle, it's you. This car, for example, was a new car worth about 5 million yuan, and He Tianzhao had invested at least 4 million yuan in modification costs, so the total value was more than 9 million yuan. Thank you so much for giving me such a big gift in the second round. Just as he had expected, Qin Guang's call came shortly after and asked, He Tianzhao's car then? No matter how much it costs. Even if it's a loss, the old man will admit it. Lu Fei grinned. It won't be a loss. That car is worth about 9 million yuan. You should be happy. He's really the boy of fortune. If he hadn't asked for it, I might not have been able to get his car. Qin Guang's lips split into a wide grin. Chapter 241. Aujia was speechless as he listened to the conversation between the two men. Before this, he had suspected that this racing god bro was here for fun, or perhaps he was here for the championship of the first 4 rounds. But now he was 100% sure. This guy was a bandit. He really wanted to take the car away. Sister Lu Fei was his mistress. These 2 men were robbers. You have such a strong motive. Are you worthy of us, the fans and racers who love our cars? Aujia looked at Wu Pan Junyao and Takahashi Ryuichi, who were standing on both sides in the distance. He thought to himself, is he really going to use my GTR to become the king of cars? Then I'll be recorded in the history books. With that thought in mind, Aujia gradually became excited again. On the other hand, due to He Tianzhao's accident, the next round of the race was temporarily postponed. The race only resumed after He Tianzhao's car was towed away. He Tianzhao himself was sent to the hospital. Before he left, he gave the car key to a friend. He knew that once he withdrew from the race, he would fall to 8th place. According to the rules of the race, he was not allowed to take the car away. But until then, he still did not think that he might lose his beloved car. He Tianzhao boasted that he and Lu Fei knew each other after all. She would not give him face, right? About an hour later, when his friend really called to tell him the bad news, He Tianzhao thought he had heard wrong. What did you say? Say it again. As he spoke, because he was too emotional, he twisted his body violently. There was a cracking sound in his neck. The bone that he had just corrected was automatically dislocated again. Your car has been targeted. It's locked. Brother Tianzhao, what do we do now? The person on the other end of the phone did not know that He Tianzhao was in big trouble again. He spoke anxiously. He Tianzhao's eyes were spinning wildly, but he could not say a word. Brother Tianzhao, say something. *CK. That was the only thought in He Tianzhao's mind before he fainted. Then he vaguely heard the scream of the nurse, and then he knew nothing else. Qin Guang was not very happy. Although it was not bad to be able to get He Tianzhao's Viper, he calculated the total amount of money he had and could not bring himself to do so. Damn it, the winner of the first round is 1 million. Fine, I'll bear with it even if it's a little less. If you win the second round, you'll give me 5 million. Even though it's a little less, I can still bear with it. But what's the point of 2.5 million for 2 rounds? No matter how he thought about it, he felt that the organizing committee was humiliating the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail. We will accept this grudge. Lu Fei helped him open the lockbox and grinned. Don't worry, there's one more in here. This is $1.5 million and $100. You're not an idiot anymore. Qin Guang's anger immediately turned into joy and he gave a thumbs up. Well done. More than an hour after the end of the second round of the race, the atmosphere on the mid-mountain racetrack had yet to cool down. Less than half of the 50,000 people had left. There were too many people standing in front of the giant screen, watching the GTR footage being replayed over and over again. Their minds were bombarded by the terrifying average speed of 145. 33. No one would have thought that in just one day the GTR would once again break its own fastest record. When he ran 139.54 yesterday, some people thought that it was just an accidental outperformance. But when it broke its own record again and performed the terrifying drifting without deceleration again and again, the world finally understood that 139.54 was far from the limit of the GTR. Perhaps 145.33 was also not its limit. Both the racer and the fans felt a strong sense of oppression from the GTR. He wasn't arrogant, and up until now no one had seen the racer get out of the car. However, people were still suffocated by the records he left behind. They thought of the nickname of the GTR, God of War. Then the matte GTR driven by that person, would it add the word invincible to the title, God of War? Invincible God of War. But that wasn't the only thing that left him in despair. In the second round, no one managed to break past his 139.54 mark. The fastest was only 139.21 for the McLaren 675, which was pushed to second by Qin Guang yesterday. Not to mention today's 145.33. Even though the race was over, none of the racers were willing to leave. Instead, they joined hands and asked the organizing committee to allow them to train overnight. One super sports car after another roared as they set off. These people didn't dare to hope that they could run a result comparable to the matte GTR in the competition. Even if they ran without any interference, it would be good to close the gap between them. Finally, some people gradually broke through the barrier of 139.54 in their desperate charge, and some even crossed the previously unattainable limit of 140. However, up until now, each of the remaining 16 racers had run at least 2 laps, and the fastest record was only above 142, still far from 145.33. Such a gap, how despairing was it? Just then 2 big trucks arrived almost at the same time. The heavy trucks attracted a lot of people's attention. Everyone frowned. It was so late. Did someone still bring their car here? In the parking lot, 2 groups of people moved almost at the same time. Whether it was the racers or the fans, they all understood. It was Pan Junyao and Ryuichi Takahashi's cars. Were the 2 car kings also going to try? Were they already preparing to participate in the race to protect their cars? Indeed, looking at the momentum of the GTR, could anyone take the championship away from him? Was there any other way other than knocking him off the track at the beginning? Sure enough, they could only rely on the car king. When this thought emerged in everyone's mind, the hearts of the people who were almost suffocated by the matte GTR began to burn again. No one realized that the low-key matte supercar had become the big devil that everyone expected the car king to defeat. Wasn't the car king the big devil that should be defeated? Some people also realized the problem with this thought. They were suddenly enlightened and surprised. Pan Junyao and Ryuichi Takahashi didn't need to say much to ask others to make way for them. When the 2 of them respectively drove the pitch-black Tiger CTR and another GTR covered in flames to the starting line, all the cars at the front of the track automatically made way for them. Even the racers who were in the middle of the race were left in the middle of the 2 parking lots and sat down quietly in front of the giant screen. The helicopter that had been parked on the tarmac suddenly took off. Mr. X, who was about to go home after a busy day, sat down on the commentary stage again. Under the night sky, the Night Beauty and the Flame War God were each warming up their engines. The air suddenly became extremely heavy. No one dared to breathe. Ah Yuan, the previous champion, held the starting gun and stood at the starting line as the referee. He raised his right hand high. Bang! Boom! The pitch-black phantom and the raging flames entangled each other and suddenly rushed out. Chapter 242. One was black, the other was red. 2 streaks of light, one was demonic, the other violent. Takahashi Junyao and Takahashi Ryuichi played their respective characteristics to the extreme. Takahashi Ryuichi was like a flaming meteor that would never retreat, always driving at the extreme speed of him and his car. He even scraped his car on the guardrail more than once, creating a long string of sparks. Wu Pan Junyao, on the other hand, was like a venomous snake lurking in the grass, flicking his tongue and eyeing his prey covetously. As long as he was given the slightest chance, he would fiercely pounce forward and take a bite. Then he would proudly swing his tail and throw the other party far away. One was as elegant as the wind, while the other was as fierce as fire. In just a little more than 7 minutes, the 2 great car kings had given everyone who was still here an extremely exciting race. When the two of them crossed the finish line almost at the same time, the audience had yet to recover from the intense battle that left them breathless. Unlike the previous race, the two car kings were supposed to be a training race to learn from each other, but it seemed to be filled with a strong smell of gunpowder that could not be melted. Almost every moment was filled with a dangerous atmosphere. In the eyes of others, the two car kings were always hanging by a thread. If it were not these two car kings, but anyone else who dared to go tit for tat like these two would have already flipped over and fallen off the cliff. When they saw the data displayed on the giant screen, there was only one word left in everyone's mind. As expected of the car king, Zhong. The average speed of the two was exactly the same. 146.45. Perhaps there would be a slight difference after the decimal point, but at least in this training race the two were completely tied. What was more terrifying was that they were fighting from the beginning to the end, and they both broke the GTR record. As expected of the car king. At the finish line, the two beast-class supercars CTR and GTR were parked side by side. Takahashi Ryuichi got out of the car, lit a cigarette and took a deep breath. Many people say that you, the young car king, have regressed in the past few years, but I don't think so. Takahashi Junyao also stood next to the car and smiled charmingly. It's all right. The two looked up at the giant screen together. He broke his record. Takahashi Ryuichi pretended to be indifferent and complacent. He didn't need to say something for others to understand. He was the one who was best at controlling the GTR in the world. Wu Pan Junyao didn't say anything else. He vaguely understood that the person wearing the V Special Agent Team mask today was still not in the right state. What was the limit of that mysterious man? The more he thought about it, the more he felt the blood in his body heating up. He really wanted to see that guy seriously run. By the way, has anyone contacted Schroeder? Will that German guy come too? Ryuichi Takahashi suddenly said without thinking. Wu Pan Junyao shook his head. I don't know. Some time ago I heard that the German took a group of friends to go rock climbing in the wild. God knows what kind of strange cliff he is hanging on. He won't be able to return to civilized society anytime soon. The German Schroeder's car was produced by Gumpert Apollo Sport, which used to be a professional modification factory and was now a niche manufacturer of sports cars. Whether it was the regular North Ring of the Nürburgring or the underground drag racing track, Schroeder was always the well-deserved hegemon. Since Schroeder became the king of the Nürburgring 7 years ago, he had never been defeated. Whether it was Wu Pan Junyao or other car kings, Schroeder did not choose to participate in the competition when they reached the peak. Perhaps it was unfortunate or fortunate. But even so, no one dared to question the ability of the king of Nürburgring, known as the Son of the Sun. His style was more violent than Ryuichi Takahashi's, but his control was as precise as a German-made machine. He was an impeccable man on the track. At this time Tianzhao, who had just woken up from a coma again, gritted his teeth and forced the nurse to hand the phone to him. He called a Chinese engineer from Schroeder's modification team. Others couldn't contact Schroeder at this time, but he could. He wanted to protect his beloved car and he wanted to invite the Son of the Sun. On the other side, Qin Guang didn't care about what was going on outside. He was lying in bed and happily chatting with someone on the phone. It was Sun Xiaoxuan who called. Qin Guang was actually quite surprised to receive a call from the gentle and beautiful class monitor in the dead of night, but he felt an inexplicable warmth in his heart. He had only been out for 2 days, but the 2 nights of intense racing had quickly turned him from a college student to an underground racer who was about to dominate the competition. This change of mentality came so suddenly that he didn't have the slightest time and space to prepare himself mentally. Even though he was still joking with Lu Fei a second before entering his bedroom, the moment he closed the door, exhaustion quickly enveloped him. He was not tired from racing but purely because as a young man he didn't know what to do with this sudden change of identity. Why did he always like to turn his mind to other places and force himself to be absent-minded during the race? It was because he didn't like racing at all. However, no matter how much he hated racing, Qin Guang had no choice. He didn't want to retreat. Even if it was only for the possibility of earning a huge sum of money, he could only grit his teeth and bear it. Suddenly seeing Sun Xiaoxuan's name on his phone, he was stunned for a moment before he remembered that in addition to being a racer, he was also a college student who skipped the final exams. Are you asleep? Sun Xiaoxuan's slightly trembling first sentence made Qin Guang, who was sitting by the window, tremble all over. No. You sound tired. Sun Xiaoxuan's voice trembled more and more. Separated by thousands of kilometers and 2 cell phones, he had only said 2 words, but she could actually hear the fatigue in his heart. Qin Guang grinned. What nonsense are you talking about? No, I'm so happy. When I come back, I'll treat you guys to a big meal. Treat the whole class. Treat the guests. 3 days. You went to earn money? What kind of job can make millions in a few days? Don't mess around. Sun Xiaoxuan said in a panic. Qin Guang was silent for a moment and finally couldn't help but say, wait for me on Weibo. There's a topic that doesn't have a lot of attention, called Hong Kong car gambling race. You can take a look. In fact, this topic has more attention than that. Maybe it's suppressed by Weibo. Thank God it didn't block it directly. You went underground to race. How could you? Sun Xiaoxuan exclaimed. Why can't I? I need money, too much money. You know that. Okay, don't worry. I'm still waiting to treat you guys to a big meal. I'll be fine even if the sky falls down. By the way, the most popular photo in that topic is me in a black GTR. Wait a minute, let me check Weibo first. He didn't expect Sun Xiaoxuan to be so anxious and immediately went to check Weibo. Qin Guang was not in a hurry and kept waiting. Although long distance and roaming were very expensive, the roaming fee was nothing when he thought about the tens of thousands of yuan that Luli had to spend every month. 5 or 6 minutes later, her voice came again. Invincible God of War Jeter? Yes. That's me. Awesome, right? Sun Xiaoxuan on the other end of the phone suddenly cried. Qin Guang was silent again. Sun Xiaoxuan's crying made him a little sad. He could hear that she wanted to help him so much. She absolutely didn't want him to race, but she couldn't do anything about this kind of thing. Even if he was called the invincible God of War, even if he forced himself to look indifferent in front of her, he couldn't stop her heart from being pulled. He didn't know how long she cried, but she was finally able to speak while sobbing. Qin Guang, you must come back alive. After this incident, I'll never go racing again. I beg you. We are students. How can students race? Today we had a physics and chemistry exam. I did very well. Bai Fan and Xiong Jinka both failed. They'll be accompanying you for the makeup exam next semester. Wait, I'll send the revision courseware I made to your email. Remember to take a look at it when you're free. She said a lot of things on and off, and Qin Guang didn't even have a chance to interrupt. Achoo. She sneezed violently. You're hiding outside the dormitory and calling me, right? You're wearing too little. Hurry and go back. I'll go in now. Rest early. You can't make any mistakes in racing. Please don't. Beep beep beep. Sun Xiaoxuan hung up. Qin Guang put down his phone and turned his head to look out the window to the west, a look of disappointment on his face. Great, he felt even more tired now. Forget it. I'll just give it my all this time. At this moment there was a sudden knock on his bedroom door. The only person who would knock it this time was Lu Fei. What was she going to do? Chapter 243. If it was another time, Qin Guang wouldn't be thinking about what she was going to do, but what he could do with her right now. But right now, after he hung up the call with Sun Xiaoxuan, Qin Guang couldn't help but think about the little girl who was hiding on the balcony outside the dormitory thousands of miles away, quietly talking to him on the phone against the cold night wind. Sun Xiaoxuan's sneeze was like a knife stabbing into his heart, ruthlessly cutting open a crack in his heart defense. Qin Guang was surprised to find that what he wanted to do the most now was to turn on the computer and look at the physics and chemistry review materials she sent. But since Lu Fei knocked on the door, he had to open the door. When he opened the door, he didn't know where she found a set of silk purple suspender pajamas and put it on. She put one hand on the door frame and stretched out the other hand. She stuck out her index finger and put it on Qin Guang's chin. Tell me, who are you talking to on the phone? It was at least 15 minutes. Stop fooling around, I was asking a classmate about the final exam. Qin Guang waved his hand to push Lu Fei's finger away and turned his head swiftly. Well, although he didn't want to admit it, Lu Fei was really a bit annoying. Especially when she deliberately posed like this. The purple color brought about a mysterious sense of charm. Under the slender suspenders, The neckline was also extremely open. There was no need for any special angle of light to easily see the cleavage of her cleavage. What was even more shameful was that this woman was clearly naked under the pajamas. The peaks of 2 mountains. Well, I can't think anymore. If I think anymore, the grapes will be ripe. Qin Guang sat in front of the computer seriously and shook his head slightly. Humph. Which? You want to plot against me? You want to embarrass me? You want to make the old man look like a pervert and then play with the old man? You want to make the old man draw a map tonight? In your dreams. Qin Guang didn't believe that Lu Fei really wanted to seduce him into her bed. After interacting with this woman for 2 days, Qin Guang believed that he had a good understanding of her behavior. The more she acted like she was throwing herself at him, the more he couldn't fall for her trick. Otherwise, he would only be seen as a fool by her. Sure enough, Qin Guang's reaction left Lu Fei stunned for a brief moment. Shortly after, she chuckled as she stood behind Qin Guang. Qin Guang had actually opened his mailbox to download the courseware and started reading it. Lu Fei showed a deep smile on her face. This kid indeed was not easy to deal with. Just now, when Qin Guang was on the phone, she really put her ear to the door to hear something. Unfortunately, the sound insulation of the bedroom door in a 5-star hotel was too good. Even if her ears were about to be squashed, she could only vaguely hear some murmurs. For a moment, she also couldn't bear it. She was really curious about which little girl was fooled by this pervert. In order to further verify the idea that Qin Guang was a pervert, when he finished the phone call, Lu Fei immediately changed her equipment and planned to give him a little surprise. In the end, he actually didn't fall for it. This made Lu Fei feel frustrated and happy at the same time. Although he was indeed a poor loser, he was really different from ordinary poor teenagers. Was that your girlfriend just now? Lu Fei was behind Qin Guang. She put her hands on his shoulders and gently rubbed them. Damn it. She started to use the advanced attack. I won't fall for it. Absolutely won't fall for it. Physical and chemical absolute defense. Dispel. Qin Guang stared at the courseware that Sun Xiaoxuan carefully prepared for him. It was undeniable that this simple courseware with a pink background did condense a lot of Sun Xiaoxuan's efforts. She used her deep understanding of this subject to clearly explain the profound in simple terms in this courseware. Qin Guang only read the beginning and felt that the effect was better than listening to the teacher's lecture. He only snorted, "Not my girlfriend, I'm the class monitor. Alright, don't think about fooling me. I'll read for a while and then go to sleep. Alright, if you really want to massage my shoulders, please use a little more force with your left hand. I've been using my left hand to change gears for the past 2 days. Most of the time it's a bit difficult, unlike my right hand which already has muscle memory. My left hand is still a little tired and a little sore." Lu Fei's expression turned cold. She sighed in her heart. Sure enough, even God would get tired. She turned around and went out the door. She wrapped a coat over her pajamas and pulled a chair to sit behind Qin Guang. She actually started to massage Qin Guang's shoulders. Lu Fei didn't know how long she had been massaging until Qin Guang's head leaned against the chair in front of her. He actually fell asleep just like that. Lu Fei patted Qin Guang's back. "Get up and sleep on the bed?" Qin Guang opened his eyes in a daze. He turned around and started snoring on the bed. His brain was a mess. He had been racing earlier and now his physical and chemical defense had accidentally turned into absolute hypnosis. His drowsiness was unstoppable. Lu Fei helped him turn off the computer. She looked at the light pink background of the PowerPoint courseware and smiled. She thought that the class monitor he was talking about must like him. As for himself, he might more or less have some feelings for the class monitor, but their relationship was definitely not at that level. Lu Fei roughly understood Qin Guang. Since he said they weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, it definitely wasn't at that level. Even if that was the case, what did it matter? What made me willing to be molested by him wasn't Qin Guang as a person, nor was it his identity as a student. It was just his incomparably domineering driving skills. I'll just take it as a souvenir for all those years of deviant love for racing. As the saying goes, good cars and beautiful women. If there was a good car, there would naturally be beautiful women. Together with the GTR, which was about to become a legend, he was able to form the second half of the beautiful car for the best racer in the world. His love for racing for so many years wasn't in vain. As for the result, that wasn't important. What future did she want? Could a woman marry a good driver? Was the future important? I'm not satisfied either. I'll let you go tonight, but wait until tomorrow. I don't believe you can still calm down in that environment. Lu Fei said through gritted teeth. But when Qin Guang's hand really got into the gap of her leather pants, she regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. Lu Fei covered her face and didn't dare to look at Qin Guang next to her. The music outside was deafening and colorful lights shone into her eyes from time to time through the gaps between her fingers. The feeling of skin touching kept surging up from her buttocks and invading her scalp. Weren't you pretty tsundere last night? I just said it casually and you really put your hand in. Qin Guang narrowed his eyes, but he looked out of the window with vigilance at all times, guarding against anyone coming over to peek. He was as nervous as a thief, and his heart was beating like a fully oiled engine. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. The old man never dreamed that her skin here would be so smooth and delicate. I must have taken the wrong medicine yesterday and missed the opportunity. My intestines are green with regret. Two people with green intestines were locked together in the narrow space of this legendary supercar. Their heavy breathing seemed to suppress the music outside. Chapter 244. When he saw his old friend from the first round again in the third round, Qin Guang was actually quite surprised. He didn't expect that the Mitsubishi EVO, which he thought was a weakling, would stumble through 2 rounds and make it into the third round. However, this guy's dream was destined to end here. First place, hee. Also, the old man was already number 8. Organizing committee, do you have to be so straightforward? I protest. I'm a fan of Bei Shuai. I'm also in the last row, at least give me number 7. I should at least feel a little better. There were more people paying attention to Qin Guang today than yesterday. If it weren't for the 2 kings breaking the average speed record of 145.33 last night, the others would have thought that the Mat GTR was completely invincible. What do you think he can do tonight? Yesterday he killed He Tianzhao, and tonight he's in the same group as Yuan. This guy really has a deep affinity with our local racers. I can't say for sure, but there's no doubt that the other 7 cars won't let him have an easy time. He's already won twice in a row, and if he gets first place again he'll be able to pick his car again. I'm afraid that no one would want their car to be locked. Therefore, from this round onwards, everyone is his enemy. I think it's hard to say whether or not he can create another miracle. There was a lot of discussion in the crowd, but not many people doubted the strength of the Mat GTR anymore. Of course, the focus of everyone's doubts gradually shifted to whether or not he would be able to withstand the targeted suppression that would appear in the race from now on. If he could maintain a clean sweep of the first and second rounds until the third round, it meant that he had a chance to truly enter the stage of protecting his car. It didn't matter if it was the racers who had already been locked, or the racers who didn't want to be locked in this round, they were all united to prevent him from continuing to win. Apart from that, the organizing committee's very targeted ranking arrangement was also to prevent the winners of the first 2 rounds from continuing to win. In the past, almost 90% of the racers in the race fell in the third round. It was already very difficult to barely maintain the top 4 in this round. Last year's champion Yuan had come in second place in the third round and lost the right to start the race. It was also because of the extremely unfair rules of the race that the status of every racer who had the last laugh rose sharply, becoming the undisputed king of cars. Moreover, there were only 10 racing kings in the entire world. Behind every great achievement of a Che Wang, there were stumbling blocks that fell under his wheels one after another. Apart from that, more and more people stood out and became the kings of their generation. These car kings would always appear in the major gambling arenas because of various invitations or because they took the initiative to come out and become the final obstacle. That was why no new car king had been born in the past 3 years. At this moment, Qin Guang didn't think too much about it. He was just looking around in boredom. On his right was a car that looked like a commonly used WRC rally car. Judging from the logo, it was a Volkswagen. But obviously this rally car wasn't as simple as it looked. Whether it was the suspension, the power, or even the tires, they were all tailored to the track of the Xianxia car racing competition. Even though it looked a bit like an ordinary family car with a sports cover, it was actually equipped with a terrifyingly powerful engine. Including the technical cost of the modification, The value of the whole car was at least 5 million yuan. The owner of this car was Wu Panjuanyao's disciple in name. He was currently the most popular driver in Xianxia. Last year he relied on this car to win the championship 3 times in the first 4 rounds and finally enjoyed the grand prize of 7 million yuan. But at this time the former champion didn't have the confidence to win. On the contrary, he had a headache. Before the teams came out, he didn't expect that he would meet this GTR so soon. Originally he hoped that the two of them would meet in the 4th round. What made Yuan even more distressed was that before he set off, he deliberately asked Wu Panjunyao about the shortcomings of the matte GTR drivers from the Thai Car King, who was both a teacher and a friend. Unexpectedly, Wu Panjunyao just raised his eyebrows. Although I don't think there's a racer who is truly perfect in all aspects in the world, I really haven't been able to find the shortcomings of this GTR so far. Don't ask me, just run according to your own habits. You're currently the strongest racer in Xianxia. You're also in the top 10 in Asia. Don't lose your momentum right from the start. In the end, Wu Panjunyao didn't say anything and Yuan couldn't do anything about it. Forget it, I'll just grit my teeth and run. At least get the 2nd place first. Although the person next to him was good, wasn't his record yesterday surpassed by Wu Panjunyao and Takahashi Ryo? He shouldn't be unbeatable, right? Yuan curiously turned his head to look at the window on his left. He really wanted to know what that person was doing at this time. With the lights on both sides of the starting line, Yuan clearly saw the face hidden under the V Special Agent Team mask. At this time that person was staring straight ahead, extremely focused. Yuan took a deep breath. What a terrifying momentum. As expected of the top racer that Mr. Wu Pan thought was flawless. Looks like the average speed of 145.33 yesterday was indeed not his limit. I hope that I can also run the most perfect race of my life in this pinnacle duel with him today. I've also used a lot of new technology on my car this year. Then Yuan followed Qin Guang's gaze and looked forward as well. Faster, see. This guy is looking at the racer girls. When he turned his head again, he was right. This guy was drooling at the corner of the V Special Agent Team's smiling face. Alright, the girl in front is quite pretty, but as a top racer, which racer doesn't lack women? Don't destroy your invincible image in my heart. Forget it, I'm also starting from the last row. I don't want to fail miserably at such an easy task. It took a lot of effort for Yuan to recover from the heavy blow that Qin Guang gave him, and he regained his focus. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, it was the last moment before the race. Yuan had already focused all his energy, staring straight ahead. His right foot kept tapping lightly on the accelerator, and his left hand held the handbrake tightly, ready to launch at any time. Hot blood slowly welled up from the bottom of his heart. Yuan had already made up his mind. Before entering the first turn, he had to overtake at least one car. I'm going to beat this guy on my left. Bang! The starting gun sounded. All 8 cars started to move. However, Yuan could clearly feel that the engine of the GTR on his left was a beat slower than him. This guy was distracted looking at the girl. Chapter 245. This was not Qin Guang's fault. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame the competition committee for their viciousness. Every time the girls sent to give out benefits were prettier than the last. *CK they could also level up along with the competition. The old man couldn't help but fall in love with the long, straight black hair yesterday. Today the short-haired girl was practically a movie star, alright? To others it might be a common sight, but to an old virgin like the old man, it was a shameful stumbling block on his path to success. Fortunately, Master Guang remembered that getting rich was more important, so he stopped in time. Although he was slower than Yuan by about 0.5 seconds, it was only a difference of half a car's length. With the previous round's opening double overtaking by Qin Guang and He Tianzhao as a reference, the lad in front of Qin Guang had learned his lesson. He stealthily pressed down on the outside line from the start, not giving Qin Guang any chance to overtake him. Qin Guang was already mentally prepared for this. He could only thank the heavens that you didn't intentionally step on the brakes to fight for the benefits of the racers in front of you. I have to thank you for your competitive spirit. On the other side, Yuan had gotten a great bargain. The guy in front of Qin Guang had purposely moved a meter to the left in order to suppress Qin Guang's route. The guy in front of Yuan had wanted to move to the right to suppress Yuan's route. As a result, there was an entire car's length gap between the two of them. Qin Guang had seen this opportunity before Yuan. Unfortunately, he had been distracted for half a second, and the gap of half a car's length had caused him to lose his chance. Instead, he could only watch as Yuan happily sped up and pressed forward. He had gotten a great surprise for nothing. On the short 300-meter straight road before the first turn, Yuan had completed his goal the moment he set off, and had even exceeded his expectations. As for Qin Guang's situation, it could be summed up in one sentence from Lu Fei. It's over. He's already lagging behind from the start. Those who could make it through 2 rounds of elimination and enter the 3rd round were not easy to deal with. Even the Mitsubishi EVO, which was originally a rookie, had been forcibly modified in the past 2 days. They added 2 superchargers and forcibly increased the maximum horsepower of the engine to close to 700. The Indian young man Udall was running more and more smoothly. He had the demeanor of a young night temptress. His turns were smooth and graceful like the wind. His boss was right. Udall was indeed a genius that only appeared once every few decades. Unfortunately, he had met Qin Guang. If we don't think of something now, I'm afraid he won't be able to break out of the encirclement. Jie said worriedly beside Lu Fei. Other people would rather let Yuan overtake them than let him overtake them easily. Lu Fei nodded. From the looks of it, there's nothing he can do on the straight road. I guess he can only count on the bend. Of course, Qin Guang himself had already realized where the problem lay. The feeling of being the enemy of the entire world was indeed unpleasant. But it didn't matter, this was just the beginning. If he's only at this level, it seems like we shouldn't have come here. It was unknown when Takahashi Ryuichi and Wu Panjunyao were standing together again. Takahashi Ryuichi was raising his chin arrogantly and looking coldly at the GTR that had fallen to the back. Wu Panjunyao was quite talkative today. He shook his head. Don't worry. At that Z-turn he will definitely make a move. That place is his absolute domain. There was some disdain on Takahashi Ryuichi's face, but he didn't say anything. Just as Wu Panjunyao said, the performance of the pitch-black GTR at the first perverse Z-turn was indeed terrifying. Putting aside the skills he had shown in other stages, just by looking at that Z-turn he was invincible. Among the people present, there were no experts at the level of Wu Panjunyao and Takahashi Ryuichi, but there were a lot of critics who were good at watching others race. On the commentary platform, Mr. X directly pointed out this matter in the broadcast. If this car intends to continue to create miracles in this race, then he must start overtaking at Z-turn at the latest. Everyone was waiting for him to reproduce his Z-turn stunt. However, this time, Qin Guang was the first to choose not to play by the rules. He made a move ahead of time. The 7 consecutive turns before the Z-turn. When others slowed down a little, intending to make a stable turn, he suddenly accelerated and pulled directly to the outside line. Before the Porsche 911 in 7th place could react, Qin Guang had already rushed past the guardrail on his outside line. He overtook at the first turn of the 7 consecutive turns. Idiot. Stupid. He Tianzhao, who had forcibly rushed out of the hospital today despite the doctor's obstruction and asked someone to send him here, waved his hand fiercely. He was furious. Then his neck twisted again. Because of Uncle Cheng, He Tianzhao did not dare to try to use any dirty tricks on Qin Guang or Lu Fei, but he had secretly contacted some local driver friends, wanting them to secretly suppress Qin Guang in the race. For example, the driver of the Porsche 911 was a friend of He Tianzhao's, but unfortunately he was not very impressive. The distance between the 7 cars had never been pulled apart. After Qin Guang overtook the first opponent, he had to face the next turn of the 7 consecutive turns without stopping, and his next prey. This time the guy in front had learned his lesson. Although he had to slow down when entering the turn, he quietly pulled the car towards the outside line, not leaving any chance for Qin Guang to overtake him on the outside line. However, this time, Qin Guang rushed fiercely towards his inside line again. There was no drift. He was running with his hands on the ground. This was not logical. Even with the strongest vehicle stability system, it was impossible to hold on to the steering wheel at such a high speed. What the hell happened? The data analysis on the giant screen and the slow-motion replay once again solved the mystery of Qinguang, but it only made people gasp. At the beginning of the design, the first generation of the GTR 32 could not drift at all. This car could be regarded as one of the modern ancestors of the running with the hands on the ground. The R32 used an extremely advanced body stability system at the time, and the choice of suspension and tires was also the most fundamental goal of firmly grasping the ground. At the beginning of the design, this car was only designed to achieve extremely high speed through stable high-speed propulsion. Coupled with the classic engine, the first generation of the GTR was almost invincible on the track. But later, especially in recent years with the advancement of technology, modifications became more and more popular. After the GTR series was skillfully trained, it could be regarded as a drifting car suitable for mountain road racing. Qinguang's car modification ideas were the result of Wang Qing's painstaking work, and after Audiobook's careful training and meticulous configuration, it was even more outstanding. However, the classic body stability system and four-wheel drive system on the GTR series were not completely removed. Most of the time they were turned off for more stable drifting. But just now, when it was clear that it was impossible to overtake the car from the outside line, Qinguang had switched the drive mode 3 times in a short period of time. Front drive, rear drive, and finally the four-wheel drive that stabilized the car. The front drive forcibly pulled the front of the car into the inside line. The rear drive briefly adjusted the car body. After the four-wheel drive stabilized the car body, it grabbed the ground and turned the corner. The Matjeter turned into a silent bolt of lightning, fast and terrifying. This was a victory for Qinguang's precise operation, and at the same time, it was also Wang Qing's great achievement in the field of car modification, and it was also a result of Audiobook's golden wrench. Qinguang had perfect control of the time lag when switching between drive modes. Instead, he had turned this lag into his own driving force. For ordinary people, this kind of rapid mode switching was no different from courting death. Machines were not gods. The four-wheel drive and front drive system that had been switched in a hurry couldn't perfectly control the car that was crazily charging through corners under the control of a computer program. However, even the short drift when the car lost control was also under Qinguang's control. With Qinguang's continuous micro-adjustments by tapping on the brakes with the tip of his foot, everything was under control. The so-called loss of control had instead made up for the last bit of turning range that he had deliberately left behind. That was why his cornering looked so strange and smooth. But if the camera was slowed down 100 times, it would be discovered that he was actually drifting intermittently every second. Chapter 246. After exiting the corner, Qinguang pounced on the car in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Lunatic, this terrifying lunatic is here again. Who could stop him? The racer in front was also at a loss. The GTR behind him was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey, but he really didn't know what to do. Should he cut to the outside to defend against his strange drifting without slowing down, or cut to the inside to defend against his even stranger running style? Also, aren't you tired after overtaking 2 cars in a row? Aren't you nervous? Aren't you afraid that one mistake will cause your death? It was a pity that Qinguang couldn't answer him. Otherwise, with Qinguang's warm heart, he would definitely be more than happy to answer his questions. No, I'm not nervous. I'm really not nervous. I can't make a mistake. I've already made all the mistakes I could in the racing god training ground, and I've died many times. In the end, this hesitant guy chose to enter the corner at 110 km per hour, taking the center line. Then Qinguang decisively took the corner at 130 km per hour from the outside, teaching him how to be a grown-up. The result of taking the center line was, of course, that he couldn't take either side. Now the person in front of Qinguang was Yuan, who had finally overtaken another car to take 4th place. Yuan was feeling unwell. He'd had such a smooth start and he'd finally taken 4th place with only a fifth of the race left. He'd thought that his journey would be a sea of stars. How did that guy mysteriously catch up from behind? How did he do it? His speed when exiting the corner was clearly at least 20 km per hour faster than him. He didn't need to accelerate too much to close the distance between them. How could he always take the corners at 130 km per hour? That's a lot less time than us. That's bullying. Did the three people behind me grow up eating sh*t? Can you guys be any worse? Yuan cursed the others into sh*t, but he himself wasn't any better. He barely managed to take one more corner than the three people who had been overtaken. At the fifth of the 7 consecutive corners he obediently gave up. The 6th corner. Another car overtook. The 7th corner. Another car overtook them. The last brother managed to maintain his position as the leader all the way to the Z-turn, but he was decisively killed by Qin Guang, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. When he returned to first place once again, all the parking lots on the huge mountain racetrack were silent. Many people speculated that this round of the competition would be the greatest test for this GTR. It might struggle under the concerted efforts of others to intercept it. They might not be able to push him out of the top 4, but they could at least make him lose the championship. What was the result? This guy had only used less than a third of the track to overtake 7 cars in a row and take back the first place. This wasn't racing, it was an adult bullying a child. In the short 1.5 minutes of Qin Guang's crazy overtaking, Mr. X's mouth had not stopped talking from the beginning to the end. He had completely turned into a machine gun, but he still could not quite keep up with Qin Guang's overtaking speed. Seeing that he had finally taken back the first place, Mr. X heaved a sigh of relief. I can finally rest for a while. Now I'm afraid there's only one suspense left, right? Can he still break his own record from yesterday? Can he be higher than the record set by Mr. Wu Pan and Mr. Takahashi last night? The suspense of this question did not even last more than a minute. When Qin Guang had run past the halfway mark, the number displayed on the timer told everyone a ruthless truth. Yesterday's record was not a record at all. Unless he crashed or flew out in the second half of the track, otherwise it would be broken without a doubt. When Qin Guang really finished running at an average speed of 151 km per hour and once again disappeared into the night sky, everyone's jaws dropped and they were speechless. He broke through 150 km per hour. Did he mean that he did not go all out for the past 2 days? Was he just playing? Mr. X was a little weak. He was almost shouting himself hoarse today. In the end he realized that most of his strength was used in the wrong place. I gave you my voice for overtaking 7 cars in a row, and you turn around and tell me that you're going to break 150 km per hour today? What a scam. He had commentated hundreds of official racing competitions and more than 10 underground racing competitions, but he had never shouted himself hoarse. He only felt extremely awkward. Wu Pan Junyao and Takahashi Ryo didn't look too good either. After yesterday's competition, the two of them had thought that although the Matte GTR was also very powerful, it was at most an opponent of the same level. In fact, although the competition between the two of them last night looked particularly intense, it did not seriously affect their respective absolute speeds. On the contrary, with a well-matched competitor, it actually helped each other and everyone performed well. After running at an average speed of 146.45 km per hour last night, although the two of them looked calm and collected, they were secretly feeling good. If they were to really run again without any interference, they might not be much faster than this standard. It was impossible for them to break the natural barrier of 150 km per hour so easily. After Yuan and the other racers who were in the same group arrived one after another, they stared at the giant screen in a daze, unable to speak for a long time. The other 8 racers who hadn't started their second race didn't even have the courage to race anymore. Many years ago, people had fantasized about whether someone could break the unsurpassable record of 140 km per hour on the mid-mountain racetrack. Yesterday, 140 km per hour had been broken. It was a historic moment. It announced the arrival of a new era on the mid-mountain racetrack, and even the global underground racing world. Some people attributed this great progress to the improvement of the racers' skills, but more people attributed the credit to the technological innovation of the cars. Many people even secretly speculated that the next threshold of 150 km per hour might be like this times 140 km per hour, and that it would take a few years to break. But in the end, it had only been a day. The car was still the same car, but the record had been broken by a whole new era. What was this? Was it a slap in the face? Did this mean that this person's driving skills had surpassed the bottleneck of science and technology? Ajia was laughing so hard that he looked like an idiot. He just chuckled, then looked back at Lu Fei and kept chuckling. Lu Fei was embarrassed by his gaze and kicked him. "What are you doing?" Ajia chuckled again and pointed at his face. "Sister Lu Fei, my car and brother Racing God's car have passed 150 kilometers per hour. I'm going to leave my name in history. I'm so happy." Lu Fei chuckled. In fact, she was quite surprised, but after interacting with Chen Guang more, she gradually adapted to Chen Guang's invincible state in the car. After thinking about it, she decided to give Ajia an even bigger surprise. "Do you know about Wang Qing's GTR in Wujing?" Lu Fei asked. Ajia came back to his senses and waved his hand disdainfully. "I know. I think it was made by a small team in Wujing. It's not on the same level as my car." "Then let me tell you something. He used that car to run an average speed of 150 kilometers per hour on the Fengquan Mountain racetrack. That was probably his first day on the Fengquan Mountain racetrack. Strictly speaking, it was his first day in contact with a supersports car," Lu Fei said with a smile. Ajia's mouth opened wider and wider. He had been to Wujing City and had run the Fengquan Mountain racetrack with Wang Qing. Of course, he knew that the difficulty of that track was not inferior to the Banshan racetrack at all. Perhaps it was even more difficult. "You're saying that he used that 650 horsepower weak chicken to run 150 kilometers per hour on the first day?" Ajia asked in disbelief. Lu Fei nodded. "That's right, that's it. Suddenly encountering the right steering wheel affected him. Until today he probably hasn't fully adapted to it. Last night he told me that his left shoulder was quite sore." Looking at Ajia's scared silly look, Lu Fei felt an indescribable sourness in her heart. The feeling of borrowing Chen Guang's prestige to brag in front of a country bumpkin, like Ajia, was pretty good. Lu Fei looked up again and saw the Lamborghini Aventador that had fallen into the last 4 places. She felt even more comfortable. Today was still a fruitful day. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.